Bienvenue. Never mind. Welcome to another episode of the Gin and Tonic Show. I'm your host, Almighty Atheismo. I'm joined by the Rationalizer and Klingschor as usual, and we have special guests Akber, Chaudhry, and Farhan Qureshi. Thank you both for joining us. We also have a whole host of callers already lined up before the show's even started, because our topic today is why I left Islam. Not me personally, but our callers. Okay, so if you've already sent a message to me on Skype, just send me another poke, and that'll put you in the front of the line. We're going to take guests right off the bat before any kind of preamble. All guests, as usual, are advised that this is going to be broadcast live on Blog TV, and it will be recorded for upload later on YouTube. So, thank you, everyone, for joining us. Let's start with just draw the first off the pile. Zaki Hughes. Zaki, you with us?
Hello, yes. Yes, I can hear you.
Where are you from, mate?
Well, I'm actually in Canada studying in university. Whoa!
Well, what?
How do I turn off this sound?
I don't know.
There we go.
Do you still have your Blog TV open? You may want to...
Yes, I do have that open. I'm new to this sort of thing.
That's fine. So, right off the bat, what was it like when you were Muslim? Why did you leave? What were the circumstances? What was the result? What was the fallout?
Well, it is a long story, but I'll try to summarize it. As I grew up into Islam at the age of 6, my parents were moderate Muslims. My father converted to Islam. The religion, I never knew about religion until the age of 6, and it came to me when I saw my mother in the middle of prayers. From there, joined her and mocked. You know how children mock their parents in sort of way, in actions that they do. Like it's I don't know if it's a love sort of thing, as far as I'm concerned. But when she was finished. When she finished it, after saying her final salat, she gave me a slap onto the face, and that is how religion. I was introduced to the world of religion.
How did you do that?
To be honest, I think it's one of those sort of things where I still question it to this day. I think, in a sense, it was mimicking. I think mimicking an action that I was ignorant of to her. It appeared as though it was an insult to what she held dear, which was, of course, Allah. And, of course, in Islam we're told respectfully to call it Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But as far as I know, that's to me so far, I think the only rational conclusion I could have come from it when I'm looking back on it in some sort of reflection.
Define moderate for me when you use it as it applies to parents. In the West, we have increasingly such a condescending low standard of the Muslim world, where moderate means you don't approve of car bombs in random places.
That is what my parents were. They, by moderate, I do mean to the point where they, I think it's by it's common colloquial, I would say cultural, by that they own the name Muslim by title, but not by practice, where outside of the core beliefs, they would question the actions of these car bombs and everything. But like the usual apologetic measure, they would say, "Oh, this is not Islam," or "Islam does not condone this unless it was provocation of some sort." Or some sort of defense. That's the way they viewed it. Whereas I would question into it, saying why such measures were taken, what is the reasoning or goal behind it. I was always that sort of person growing up, always wanting to logically question everything sometimes deeper than it should go. And that, I think, started my path of reason and rationality, especially public education and what we learn from public schooling, like evolution, gravity, general relativity, as well as even say basic fundamentals of rational thought.
Well, if you're raised in Louisiana nowadays, you don't have that problem. I'm not sure if they've actually they've finally broken the dam of protection that secularists have been, and the court systems have been battling, and they actually have in the textbooks bare bones religious, obviously Christian creationism and this really piteous straw manning of evolution.
I see.
Yeah.
Is that nonsense? They're calling it intelligent design, or the case for intelligent design.
They keep rebranding. They're like, creationism is gone. Hold on, and then they take their placards and their presentations, and they go in the next room. They cross out creationism, write in intelligent design, come back in. And then they say, oh, intelligent design gets struck down by the courts, so they take that in the room and they cross that out and they write in, penguin fornication, and they bring it back in, and that gets rejected, and they cross it out, and they just keep calling it something else. And yeah,
it sounds like that group with Anjum Chaudhry. They're like Islam for you, and then they're Islam for UK, and every time they get banned, they just like change one of them.
Pretty soon they're going to be like a spam account on the internet. It'll be like Islam 4825689.
Yeah. Islam are us.
Yeah. just keep rebranding.
Is it wrong for me? Is it wrong for me to just come out one day in London Central Market, brandishing a sign going, "Resist the Templars, join the atheist assassins"?
Yeah.
From Assassin's Creed. But no, it's just a parody sort of thing in my mind. But from my path from say Islam to atheism, I must say I loved the works of Greek philosophers and scholars. I was always an imaginative person. I always liked the creativity and things that go into, say, writings. Like, for example, if no one's ever read it, I would recommend Homer's Iliad. And the Odyssey. Those are very great works, and how they do emphasis of the sublime. And yet, as I was growing up, I was told, or I was said, that this is a work of fiction. It is not to be treated as fact, compared to, say, the Quran, which is supposed to be considered fact, because it was written, allegedly, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty God, delivered via Jibreel to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That was how I was taught. Yet, as I came to the Jumat sermons, that's held every Friday, every time I would sit into the masjid or mosque, they would preach on and on about things Muhammad said, and yet when they said it, it seemed to contradict the notion that Islam meant anything about peace, because I would always hear about crimes, be it either finitely committed or unintentionally committed, get punished in regards to hellfire, for example, or something of or the caliber thereof. For example, in Adam and Eve, the story that is common in Christianity, one Muslim apologist, a preacher in our sermon, would say, "Oh, but they were forgiven, yet they were still put on earth." Because they were created solely for the purpose of earth. And then I would say, but if we were supposed to be made for earth, mind you, and this action took place, and this is a good example, this action took place in a place outside of Earth and time and space and what have you. What valuable objective method can you use to prove this claim? What can you do to show me? And this started this started a train of more complex thoughts, you know, to even question the existence of or the objective proof for a god.
Does anyone on the panel have any further questions before I bring in the next? I'm actually going to leave him in and have the guest callers in 2 at a time.
Okay. I'm a bit curious that there's an expression that I once heard for putting stuff on your shelf, and when you're trying to believe something, you want it to be true. Whenever you come across a piece of information that's uncomfortable because it kind of conflicts with what you believe, you kind of mentally put it on a shelf in the back of your mind and think, one day in the future I'll understand that, I'll just wait. And I was just wondering, what kind of things did you have on your shelf when you were still a practicing Muslim?
Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear much of your speech, mate. It kind of cut off a bit from lag.
Yeah, I heard your audio was a bit quiet and muddy, Rash, but I thought I heard your last question, if you want to repeat it.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Basically, when you're trying to believe something because you want it to be true, you often come across items of information that contradict and threaten your belief. And people tend to have this mental strategy for coping with that. They kind of put the information on a shelf in the back of their mind and hope that one day in the future it will make sense to them according to their worldview. I was just wondering, while you were a practicing Muslim, what kind of things did you have on your shelf?
The things I really had on my shelf were 3 categories. It was the concept of science, like, for example, evolution, gravity, quantum mechanics, stuff like that, as well as even my favorite, dinosaurs, which the Quran has no mention of. And it would be like, if there was an all-knowing being, why didn't it mention dinosaurs? You know, that predated humanity or something like that. Those were such thoughts like that. And at the time when I was I could say I was believing it out of loyalty to my mum, my father.
Okay, well, we can carry on with atheism because it's not very interesting. Right. Akber, if you can remember the question you asked an hour ago, please, please do actually ask word for word per.
Okay, I'll try my best. Here it goes. So, the question was, as you exactly said, that it was either stories that he'd heard, religious stories or myths or things like that that turned out not to be that rational, or it was a general philosophical bent of Islam that turned him off, or whether it was just a more general, even more general exasperation with religion as a whole. And that was my question to him.
And that's a very understandable and reasonable question to ask. My answer to that was, it was a combination of a lot of factors. If it was just by the stories that someone misinterpreted the story, the first thing I did when I was in the religion was try to, go to the imams, the scholars, the people that they said, oh, actually don't listen to it from us, we might have got it wrong, talk to the people that say the source. When I tried to confirm it with the source, they then redirected me to the Quran. Now, my reading of Arabic over time has gotten weaker, so I started to actually read it in my native tongue, in English. And then from a good example was, and that's when it comes to the ideology in itself, the view, the actual examining of the ideology itself, which is where that's what led me to a skeptical, lack of belief view. One of the Quranic verses, I forget its exact verse and chapter, but it said, "Had I not created all that you see, the universe, etc., etc., so that it is not worthy of worship." That sort of verse, it's saying, if an all-powerful being that somebody alleged was self-sufficient, was able to, be without dependence on something, yet it created everything just to worship it, that contradicts the label, the attribute, if you will, towards this all-powerful deity from reading, and this I just got just by reading the Quran, the logical contradictions that even started plaguing me as a child as I kept learning more and more stuff through public education.
Yeah, so the verse that you're referring to is, I have not created men or jinn except that they worship me. So that's the verse that it applies to ins and jinn, which is one of the names of this show. Yeah. I have not created them save that they worship me. It gives a purpose of life. So the way I understand religion is that it has to cater for different levels of understanding and different levels of involvement with religion. For example, philosophy or psychology is a very academic pursuit, and the vast majority of people will never grasp those concepts, or will never engage, or never have the time to engage with philosophical debates. Religion works at multiple levels, and in Arabic it's called butun, or inner sanctums of religion. So when you see people like Imam Ghazali, or you hear other people, they are talking at a very different plane on the philosophical issues. But when you hear these common stories being told, this is to cater for people for whom religion is probably 1% or 2% of engagement of their lives,
Okay, do you think I can jump in there really quick? Just a comment in terms of kind of why I feel as if I left Islam, and then also dealing with the spirituality versus philosophy, which is a very important topic to me as well. I do think that religion offers people 5 different components. It offers them spirituality, it offers them philosophy, it offers them a methodology, it offers them a mythology or a mythological framework, and sometimes a social. It offers them a social construct as well. So we're looking at 5 different components when we're looking at religion. In terms of offering them spirituality, the interesting thing about Islam and Christianity both is that they claim exclusivism. So with their exclusivity claims, they believe that unless the population believes what they believe, that we deserve it, go to hell. And that was, I guess, my main reason for leaving Islam, was the existential reality that unless I conceptualized reality a certain way, that I would deserve to be burned and tortured for eternity. And that was more of an existential issue, not just for myself, as I thought about the implications in terms of my family, in terms of my coworkers, in terms of the friends that I grew up with, and thinking about the diversity and plurality and humanity in general. And I think Zaki was talking about that earlier, his love for humanity. That the vast majority of Christian scholars and Muslim scholars teach in this doctrine of hell. And it's one thing to have spirituality, and it's also you can even believe in God and not follow any of these organized religions, but that's not enough for Islam or Christianity.
Yeah, so Christianity says that if you don't believe in Christ as the Savior, you are doomed. Whereas Islam says if you associate partners with Allah, if you do not believe in one God, you're doomed. It doesn't hold that exclusivity of salvation to itself, but it includes Christianity, Judaism, and other religions also, it excludes mushrikeen from that category. So it doesn't claim to be exclusive as Christianity does. So in the Ladina Amanu wal Ladina Hadu, the people who believe, and the Jews and the Christians, whoever believe in God and do good deeds. It takes a very strong position against associating partners with Allah, and I believe that has to do with the division inside a person. There has to be a singular focus. So Islam's singular focus is on the one God, which was a reaction against the many gods that have cropped up. And even in this day and age, there are many false gods that we worship. To put that in a modern context. So I don't believe that exclusivity is only for that specific creed. It's for a specific concept.
Well, the Quran in chapter 2, verse 200, I think it's verse 256 says that no other deen will be accepted by Allah except al-Islam. And all of the classical scholars in Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, as well as the followers of Ahl Bayt, the Shia Muslims, they interpret that as meaning the followers in the methodology and the rituals and the dogmas of the Muslim Ummah. That you have to believe in the Quran, you have to perform these specific rituals, you have to believe in these fundamental doctrines. And if you don't believe in these fundamental doctrines, then your destiny will be hell. Now, there's one component of the exclusivity doctrine, and there's the other moral component of torture as a punishment, and not just torture, but I think eternal torture as well. So I think there's two different things that we have to think about. First, do you honestly believe that God would create a system where people who don't conceptualize reality a certain way, don't perform certain rituals, that they deserve to be tortured? And I think Brother Zaki also brought up the point of Allah requiring worship, and there's a certain level of authoritarian, maybe even totalitarian narcissism there, where it's there where I deserve to be worshipped.
So to answer your first question, that verse that you're referring to that does not mention hell per se. So we cannot combine one theme from one place. Sorry.
Can I just append? In Surat Al-Imran, verse 85, it says, and whoever desires other than Islam as religion, never will it be accepted from him, and he in the hereafter will be among the losers.
Yeah, that's what it definitely says, and that was the sort of thing that these preachers say in our Friday mosques in Jamaat, which really scared me as an individual who loves each and every individual human being to strive for what they want in life.
Yeah, so as Farhan said, religion does provide a sense of identity and a sense of community and a social structure. So religion will, by definition, never be universalist. I've had many arguments with one of my atheist friends on the global identity, and I said, will there ever be such a thing as a global identity? So, or will we ever be doomed? Is humanity forever doomed to have these sectional identities? So from that point of view, yes, the global identity where it accepts every human being for what they are will not exist. Now, Islam is interpreted in a broader way in the Quran in many areas. If you see the verses about Abraham, it says he was a Hanifa Muslima. He was one of the sincerest Muslims. So Islam is taken in a broader sense in some areas. It is not the religion that was left by Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam after his death. It is a broader connotation in the form of the religion of Abraham. And the Quran does refer to Abraham repeatedly as a Muslim. So yes, if some scholars have said that rituals and stuff are a must, I do not agree with it. But again, I'm not in the majority. There is definitely room in Islam for more pluralistic approach to things. But I doubt whether any religion will ever extend its plurality to the whole of humanity. I mean, the Catholic and Anglican churches don't get along in that exclusivity. So there will be some degree of exclusivity, but I think there is a need in Islam for a bigger tent.
Akber, can I ask you a question about hell?
Yeah.
Do you, according to your understanding, is it actually a hell where people will be burned?
Whatever is going to happen in the hereafter cannot be described in our. It can only be referred to. It can only be referred to as examples, but it cannot be. It cannot be quantified in our terms. So the Quran says.
Yeah, the Quran talks about burning and skin being stripped off and then being replaced to feel the pain again. It's not a metaphor for, you won't be able to eat jelly or you're not allowed to have orange pop. It's obviously a metaphor for something that's extremely torturous that lasts for an eternity. Do you like that?
Okay, now wait. Before you come back, this is an important topic, but I do think we're getting a bit sidetracked from the primary topic.
Let's not go into it in depth.
Yeah, exactly. So after Akber comes back on, I'm going to keep Zaki on, and I'm going to bring in Ahmad in next. Okay, but this isn't the focus is going to be.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I just want you like.
A brief answer. It is meant to be scary. Let's put it this way.
So you don't like it. That's good. You don't like it. That's all I want. I just wanted you to admit that you don't like it.
No. It is meant to be scary. It is definitely intended to be extremely scary. And just as any state government wants people to think that prison is very, very scary, and they like to keep it that way. Yeah, hell will be scary, and we would like to keep it that way.
Yeah, if you do practice the wrong deed and you find yourself in hell, don't drop the soap.
If I may interject, actually, the rationality of prison, it's not the idea of prison itself, it is the actions that either A, lead you to prison, or what happens within the prison itself that scares you. So, for example, as Rationalizer put it, the verse of how your skin will be torn over and over and over again, just because it irked the ire of a god. For a finite crime you did, that means it leads a scared mind to question. Even a child at best, they would be like, what have I done wrong? It's like, what if anything I do by those who follow the religion is perceived as wrong or haram, as we know it, then basically, even for that finite crime, it would be technically a means to throw it in a position where you get infinitely tortured.
Yeah, but see, you have to keep things in balance. The law is always meant to be a deterrent. The threat of punishment is always meant to be a deterrent. And then in the same Quran, Allah says that His mercy encompasses everything. And that even if you were to repent at not on your deathbed, but just before your deathbed, it is up to Allah again to forgive you everything. So you have to balance the very extreme deterrent effect of hell with always the hope for mercy. Because if you don't have hope, then people will say, well, I'm doomed to hell anyways. So why not do some, a few more murders or a few more things,
Well, that's called slippery slope fallacy. Let me lay my cards on the table. This is an iPhone, right? Not only do I claim that it is the equal of Allah, I believe that this is superior to Allah because, one, it actually exists, and two, if I talk on it, someone answers back, and other people can empirically test that actually happens. Now, what I've just done is committed shirk. I've committed the unforgivable sin. But in my mind, I've done nothing wrong because I've just basically said teapots can't talk in my mind. So now I cannot be forgiven. I will be metaphorically burnt to death forever and ever, and then to death again forever and ever, and so on.
Rash, I'm not the biggest fan of Allah, but He's still better than any Apple product. Ahmad, welcome to the show.
That's Samsung Galaxy then.
Hello.
So, thank you for coming, and tell us a little bit about yourself, and what was your experience like growing up as a Muslim, assuming you grew up as a Muslim, and then why did you leave?
Hi, yes, thank you for having me. Well, actually, I was born and grew up, I grew up in Iran, which is an Islamic country, and my parents were moderate Muslims. So was I until the age of 17, that I first left Iran, although my travel was to another Muslim country, to Turkey, but it was something that just burst the bubble in my mind. I was a Shia Muslim, which is the majority branch of Islam in Iran, and I always thought that everything which is told to us about Shia Islam is the absolute truth, and there is no way to just criticize them. But when I went to Turkey, there was a very, very simple question brought in my mind, and it was that if there is only one God, and He has ordered us to do some things in some certain ways, why do people, Sunnis and Shias, say the prayer in different shape? And the Shia clergies claim that if you say prayer like like a Sunni, which hold their hands in front of everybody, your prayer is not going to be accepted by God. And this is a small question. I knew the difference, but when I felt it, I really felt, okay, what is there that makes me think that I am right and the other person which says the prayer in a different shape is not? And this was the start and at the beginning of the questions which brought me to the conclusion that maybe everything that is said in the society is not the absolute truth, and maybe I can question more things than just the style of saying the prayer. And by the end, I just I dared actually to question the existence of God, which than the existence of Apple iPhone.
Okay, well, let me ask you real quick. Tell us a little bit about Iran, because it's not every day we meet someone from there.
Okay, absolutely. It's like a year that I'm living in Germany. That's why I dare to, be on video. Well, Iran is an Islamic country, which is not maybe like what you see from outside, because the government is Islamic. It's some kind of radical Islamic country, a government, sorry. And in Iran, I guess, there are more secular people in Iran than any other Islamic country in the world. This is how I feel. And, well, in large cities, in big cities, educated people are more criticizable, the religion, the beliefs, than people who are more traditional and live in small towns. The government is not going to tolerate any criticize unless you accept what they say at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the overall dickishness of the Iranian government is the stuff of legends. But really, in society at large, is there any open irreligiosity there? Do people dare, or do people feel that way?
Yes, I guess that the society is much freer than other Islamic countries. I was in Turkey, which government has no problem with you if you dare to criticize something or you claim that you are not a Muslim. Because, in Islam, you're supposed to be a Muslim if you're born to Muslim parents. And the penalty is death if you just claim that you're not a Muslim anymore. It's just like me. The penalty for me is death. It's supposed to be death in Islam and, of course, in Iran. But I guess that Iran has a much more tolerant society in this respect than even countries like Turkey, which have free governments or relatively free governments.
Ahmed, would you say that the youth are generally moving towards leaving Islam? I found that Persian or Iranian youth that I've met, in matter of fact, most of the apostasy that's happening is from Iran. You don't find as many apostates from Pakistan or the Middle East or the Arab civilizations as you do from Iran, and I found that most of the Persian youth that I've met and I've come across is no longer Muslim.
Yes, I can absolutely say that because I have a lot of friends, and there are a lot of young people in my family and relatives which are not Muslims anymore. I can't say that most people who leave Islam are moving towards atheism, towards being an atheist, but I believe that many young people are just leaving Islam. And I guess I can say that the main reason is the knowledge that they get. I guess maybe that's because of that is the result which comes from the behavior of the government, which claims which is the Islamic government.
Yeah, so this pattern, we will see this pattern being repeated over and over, that there was a mullah said this, or a Maulvi said this, or somebody said this, and they have to take a lot of the blame for driving youth away from religion and for sectarianism, because Muslim countries have generally lived very peacefully until 150 years ago. They lived in very isolated communities. They didn't have to live and work with other religions or other people. So they said there's only one straight and narrow path, instead of saying here is the path and anywhere in here is okay for you to be. So this is a message that is coming back to haunt them, and I do take exception to the mainstream mullahs whose job is to who usually tell people that there is only the straight and narrow. It should be a broad path rather than a narrow path,
I would disagree on the point that Muslims were in isolation. I mean, not only were there large Muslim empires like the Ottomans, the Safawi, the Mughals, but also in recent times. But I mean, there have always been massive. I mean, in Jordan, there's a huge Christian minority. Say in Egypt, in Iran, large Jewish and Christian minorities, Zoroastrian minority. Even in Afghanistan, there is still. It's quite small now, but even in the last few hundred years, there was a very large pagan minority living in Afghanistan. Yeah, so yeah. I wouldn't say that Muslims have been in isolation.
So what you're saying is exactly proves the point. If you look at the Levant, if you look at Palestine, Syria, and Jordan, where there's always been Christianity, you see them a very liberal society, and you don't see that kind of hard line that you see in Iran, or you see in Saudi Arabia, or you see in Pakistan, or you see in other such countries. If you look at the Mughal Empire and the Spanish government, the government in Al-Andalus, these were examples of tolerance, and you wouldn't find mullahs on the loudspeakers saying that everybody in Spain is going to hell, or everybody in Palestine is going to go to hell. You will not find that, but you will find that in Saudi Arabia, you will find that in Iran, you will find that in Pakistan. So where Muslims are a very high percentage of the population, they've forgotten how to live with other religions and other strains of thought. So I would definitely blame those so-called scholars who will say that if you fold your hands or if you throw your hands by your side, your prayer will not be accepted. That is absolute rubbish, and the Quran doesn't say anything about how you do your prayer. It's all but through tradition, through sunnah. I was in Oman for 2 years, and the Ibadi people there, they have their hands by their sides when they pray. And I sometimes used to fold, and I sometimes used to fold my hands. Nobody ever said to me that your prayer would not be accepted. So when we see this intolerance from the clergy, this is what leads our young people to leave the faith,
Well, you said that you actually mentioned something like this last time you were on the show, that there were some places in the Arab world where you wouldn't be afraid to assume a slightly different prayer posture, but that you thought that some places in Pakistan you might get thrown out or be in physical danger. Were you being completely serious and sober about that? Would you actually be assaulted?
Yes. In some places in Pakistan, if you were to fold your hands or fold them up here or fold them down here, it's a symbolism of belonging to a certain tradition within Islam, a sect. I don't call them sects because they're not really sects. There's certain traditions. Whereas if you go to the UAE, if you go to Dubai, there is a mosque just by the airport. You will see people coming into Dubai airport, going to that mosque and praying in all different kinds of ways. Then in Dubai, I will give you an example of another mosque, which is by the gold market there. I see people from India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and all over the world coming here and praying in their own style, and nobody gives a hoot about about how they do it. But in some places where you have a very large Muslim concentration, you will actually get chased out of the mosque, if not physically assaulted, you know?
Now, Ahmad, coming back to you, did you find that the attitude regarding the prayer stances cut both ways? Because when you were in Turkey, you must have had more than adequate opportunities to talk to your Sunni counterparts. So then, did they also have to draw the hard line that your Shia religious teachers had about having the wrong prayer stance and the prayers being returned to sender if they weren't done properly?
Let me first explain something about what Akber just said. Unfortunately, I'm going to reject the arguments that he just made, because I don't think that all Muslims are living in isolation, or since the last 1.5 century they were in isolation. Because in Iran, before the revolution, there were many thousands of Europeans and Americans living in Iran, and Iran society has traditionally, as far as I know, been very tolerant towards people who follow other religions. Okay, so we cannot say that isolation is the reason why this happens in Islamic countries. And about Christians in Lebanon, did you really feel that Lebanon, as you called, which you think is a liberal country, do you think that it's a safe country? Do you think that Muslims and Christians are living practically in peace? I think Lebanon is not a very stable society, and it's not just about, the story is not just about being in isolation. I think that the culture in some Islamic countries is set how that they're not going to tolerate different thoughts just because this is the way their fathers have grown them. You know, in Turkey, I told you, as maybe I can explain this. In Turkey, you're going to be asked, definitely, as a foreigner, you're going to be asked, what is your religion? Even here in Germany, I have a housemate. He's from Iraq, Kurdistan. He's a Muslim, definitely. The first question was, what's your religion? But you're not going to ask that in Iran. I have an Iranian housemate, which is a Christian. His parents are Muslims. He just is a Christian. And I never asked. I just found that he is a Christian when my other housemate, which is from Iraq, asked him. You know, I don't want to say that Iran's government is not the reason why people move out of Islam. I just want to say that I think the world is changing, but some societies are not changing, and it's not about isolation. You have access to free will and free thoughts in Turkey more than you have access to them in Iran. But I think that Iranians are more liberal than Turkish people.
Yeah, agreed. So the question that Atheismo said is, have you, after you've left Iran, have you seen examples of a much more tolerant attitude towards a prayer stance, for example?
Not really.
So if you go to a mainstream Sunni mosque in London or in Frankfurt, would you see that kind of an approach?
Well, I've never tried it, so I can't talk about it. But I know that people, I have felt that Turkish people, because I have met many Turkish people, I feel that their attitude towards a Muslim and a non-Muslim is different. But I can't feel that much in Iran.
Okay. And Farhan, have you seen that attitude towards a prayer stance in Sunni mosques, that they're very particular, or are they more tolerant?
No, I'm going to agree with you, Chaudhry Saab. Absolutely, I've been to many mosques throughout North America, Canada, and London, and I found that they were very tolerant of the different schools of thought, and this was actually encouraging to me. But I've heard of stories in the Middle East where they're not as tolerant. But again, even in Mecca, we do find these different schools of thought being embraced, and I think it's more of a fiqh issue, anyways. and not an Aqidah issue, and so that's why they're not as intolerant. So I'm going to agree with you, Chaudhry Sahib. It doesn't seem to be that much of an issue. But I mean, another thought that was coming to my mind is that you have to be very careful not to fall to the logical fallacy of appealing to authority. I don't think it's a good reason to leave a religion because the leaders of that religion are corrupt. For example, the Roman Catholic Church, you have several bishops and priests who've been caught doing all kinds of things, everything from money laundering to child molestation to all kinds of, immoral things. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Roman Catholicism is a false religion, and if I'm a Catholic that I should leave it. And so we have to be very careful to do that. But I wouldn't deny the fact and deny the reality that people are leaving religions, whether Roman Catholicism or Islam, because they are so discouraged by the corruption of the leadership that they experience.
So just to wrap this up, I engage in a lot of sectarian arguments where I say there are no sects, we should be tolerant of each other, and the ultimate argument that always wins for me is the Hajj. So when people say Shia are Muslim, are not Muslim, Sunni are not Muslim, I say, well, they all come together at Hajj. So one of the good things about Hajj is it's always kept the Muslims and it's given the Muslims a chance to look at each other and to look at the different cultures and different traditions that come together in that one city or one day. So it has kept alive a certain amount of tolerance, but there are very intolerant places out there. I agree.
Well, can I just make one more comment to Akber Chaudhry Sahib, because I was in the same line of work that Chaudhry Sahib is in now, which was to bring about a reconciliation between the sects, denominations, and schools of thought within Islam, and I wanted there to be more of an inclusivity there within the Muslim Ummah. But now, after having left Islam, I feel the same way in terms of all of humanity. Now I've embraced a universalism in terms of all traditions and faiths and whatnot. And a matter of fact, I attend a Unitarian Universalism congregation that includes atheists, agnostics, humanists, and theists alike. We all come together and talk about life. We talk about social justice and things of that nature. We quote from Aristotle, and the choir sings John Lennon. And do you think, Akber Chaudhry Sahib, when you're looking for that inclusivity within the Muslim community or within the Muslim Ummah, do you think that it's possible that you can embrace all of humanity and look for a higher cause in that way?
So very good question. It took me a very, very long time and many arguments with one of my best friends. If he's listening, or I will send him the link. Dr. Tahir Mansour. He lives in Buffalo, New York, and he's a self-described agnostic/atheist. And he and his wife have always espoused. She's a poet, by the way, well known in the Toronto area. Have always criticized me on not having a universal identity. So here I apologize that I have deliberately chosen or deliberately ascribed to the fact that we will not have a global identity. So call me pessimistic in this regard. But whenever we move towards a global identity, if you look at the Islamophobia going on right now and how people push against each other, I'm very pessimistic about having a global identity where all of humanity is eventually going to come together. I believe there will be 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 main blocks, whether you want to call them religions or whether you want to call them race-based, but something like Eurasia and Oceania. I don't think there will ever be a global identity, because the moment you move towards a global identity like we did in the 1960s and 70s and 80s, something like the fall of the Russian Empire will again bring those people, those haters, you can call them, who will, if you look at the Islamophobic propaganda being spewed by Pamela Geller and all these people, it's so vile that I don't believe there is ever going to be a common identity. So I'm sorry about that.
If I may,
I'd like to put in my 2 cents really quick. A couple of things that Farhan said. One of which I agree with. One of that I disagree with about Catholicism as a counterexample. he was saying that just because people other people in the religion misbehave, that doesn't mean that it's false. And strictly speaking, from an epistemological standpoint, that's absolutely correct. Every single you can have a religion that has just say 100 people, and 99 of them are just the worst, most awful bastards ever, and you're the 100th, and you're wondering what the deal is. But after careful investigation, you find out that it is the true faith, and that something's just awry with the followers. Maybe God just spoils his favorite people or something like that. So strictly speaking, that could be true. But I don't think that the Catholic Church is a good example of that, because here we're talking about scandals in the case of child abuse especially that runs to the very top and has been endemic. It's been like a corporation, Child Rape International. It's been so widespread that even though the misdeeds of the church on an individual scale or on a group scale, it doesn't necessarily disprove all of Christianity or theism. I do think it blows any notion of credibility the Catholic Church ever had of being the one true church or the chosen servants of God on this earth. I think it does disprove the Catholic Church itself having that kind of authority or position. And frankly, I don't understand how there's even a single Catholic left after the extent of how many children have been abused. Because if I was I think that if I was a Muslim and I said, okay, well, such and such a group, there's a handful of people setting off car bombs and nonsense like that, I can understand saying, okay, these people are doing it wrong. They're messed up. If I were to sort of draw a pyramid structure that represented the total people who are just claiming themselves as Muslims, you could see it like at one bottom corner you have a sliver of the people engaging in the worst activities, and the rest of them, they may not be perfect, but that doesn't disprove the religion, as you said. But it would certainly cause me to question it. But in the case of Catholicism, it's the top of the pyramid that is doing the misdeeds. It's the people that are the authority. I know Catholics, and I don't understand how anybody can stay in that institution. I really don't. And they say, well, we also have soup kitchens. And I'm like, well, can you leave? Can you walk out and start another parallel church that feeds the homeless and doesn't rape children? Just a thought, I don't understand how anybody could remain.
Well,
let Farhan come back, because that was a critique of what.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one point. First of all, child molestation exists not just within the Roman Catholic Church. I think there's a higher percentage amongst Protestant pastors.
Yeah.
Statistic that I read, and in the Muslim countries, there have been many madrasas who are guilty of child molestation as well. So child molestation is a human behavior. We can look at it psychologically. In terms of the Roman Catholic priests themselves, that they are told that they are to remain celibate. So what they do is psychologically attempt to suppress their sexuality, and unfortunately it comes out in other ways. So it's a human behavior that I don't think has anything to do with Roman Catholicism or religion at all. It's a psychological issue.
So on the success of Catholicism, let me let you into a secret of organized religion. Catholicism is popular and is going to continue to be popular regardless of the press it gets, because it is considered by the average human being to be stable and rock solid. Catholicism takes a view on certain things, and they don't change that view for centuries. If they've taken a view on contraception or they've taken a view on abortion, they will stick by it, and people like that stability in Islam as well as they like that stability in Catholicism. And if you look at England, a lot of Anglican Christians are moving to Catholicism. The biggest example of that being Tony Blair himself, just because they don't like the shifty sands of Anglican theology, which can change at any time,
Yeah, I can't understand why people aren't a bit more demanding and say, well, let's have our cake and eat it too. Let's pray to the same God and observe the same tenets, but not be part of an organization that rapes children. I'm sorry, that would be such a deal breaker for me, because and like what Farhan says is right about the Protestant ministers, that goes drastically underreported. But like I said, this was organized. The current Pope was the go-to guy for the previous pope, who gets so much adulation, even though this was going on and he must have known about it. He was the go-to guy to sweep it all under the rug and help people avoid prosecution. So the fact that it was centralized and that you had known pedophiles, I mean, it's one thing, if I run an institution, if I run a company, or if I'm a little, king of a city-state, and then there's a scandal, and I just, okay, well, off with his head, or he's thrown out, or something. But they assisted. I mean, it becomes much more sinister in my eyes. I mean, it's so hard to divorce yourself from that part of the element. I mean, you're taking your spiritual guidance from a chain of the command that is just riddled with career pedophiles. I don't understand how there's a single Catholic
left. The thing is, though, there's also a difference between people within a religion doing it and people using the religious scripture to justify it.
Yeah.
Now, these people were abusing their positions of power within a hierarchical religious environment. But if you can actually look at the Bible, and in there it says that you can have sex with young children, then you've got a much stronger argument against that, the religion itself. Now, the thing is we all know that some Muslims will think that sex with a 9-year-old girl is okay, and some will think that it's not.
Here we go again.
No, listen. Some think that sex with slaves is okay, some think that it isn't. And I'm not going to argue which one is correct. But what I am going to say is, when people can look at their religious sources and derive two completely different meanings on something as important as whether it's okay to have sex with minors, then there's an absolute massive failure on the part of the entity that decided to use that medium to put across its instruction manual for humanity.
So, minor, is it 21, is it 20, is it 19, 18, 17, or 16?
Premonarchial due to young age.
Exactly.
So younger than the average age at which you are expected to have your first period.
Yeah. So the Quran says hilm. It used the word hilm for puberty. And there is not a single tradition or a single major school of thought that will say that any sexual activity is allowed before puberty, whether it's a man or a woman.
No, Klingschor, hang on a minute. No, Islamic puberty. You're saying Western puberty. Islamic puberty has got nothing to do with pubic hair, for example. If you go to islamqa.com, Islamic puberty could be when they first have a period. It could be the arrival of puberty. I don't think they even mentioned pubic hair.
It is the case. Yes.
Or if the girl has a dream of a sexual nature and discharges lubricating vaginal fluid. So if she has a sexual dream where she excretes a vaginal lubricant...
Okay, okay, sorry. Puberty is a concept on which I believe all of humanity is agreed.
Puberty is a mistranslation. It's not puberty, it's majority, right? It's bulugh, right? It's not actually puberty as we understand it.
Yablughul huluma is the exact word. People who reach a certain age of puberty. So whether it's 18 or 17 or 16 or 21 or 19, that is the law of the country to decide. And what I will say here is that those Islamic scholars who do not obey the law of the land in the country they live are actually fasad fil ard. It is fasad fil ard. They are going against the law of the country. So if a Muslim says that the legal age of consent in the United Kingdom is 16, but Islam says 14, that is wrong. You have to live by the law of the land.
That's completely irrelevant, because we're not talking about should Muslims be able to have sex in country with a 14-year-old in a country where that's illegal. What we're saying is if God has given this law to all mankind and then all mankind followed it, why is it that some people can look at it and say, no, you can't have sex with them until they're at least 14, and then some people can look at it and say, no, here's the evidence that says you can have sex with her as young as 9. Now, considering it is a very important issue, now research has been done which shows that females under the age of 14 are 50% more likely to have a miscarriage than those over, and they're twice as likely to have a miscarriage as people about 19 and over. So obviously nature is telling us don't have sex with them, yet two different groups of people from apparently the same religion can look at the same text. Some will say sex with 9-year-old girls is okay, some will say it isn't. It's a very important issue. Why was such a big failure made to communicate such an important issue?
Yeah.
We're going to let Akber come back to that, and then we're going to move on, because again, this isn't...
Religion has been exploited by the cultural forces and political forces. There are some, to be very fair and very honest here, there are some Arabian cultures or tribal cultures or mountain cultures that want to justify certain things. And any scholar who twists or stretches the description of puberty is doing a great disservice. And he's probably doing it for the benefit of a certain culture or a certain ruler. So no rational person would agree with that, you know.
Okay, thanks a lot. We're going to say we're going to say goodbye to Zaki. Thank you very much for your contribution. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure to have you all. Cheers.
Cheers. And we're going to bring in Omar to join us.
I said if sub. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I said Ikhlas before. Sorry, what I meant was al-ihtilam. Ihtilam, not sub. Sorry, which is al-ihtilam is if a girl has a nocturnal emission. That's one of the signifiers that she's mature. But look, I mean, I just want to quickly say there's no debate. I mean, the reality is that according to fiqh, right, when a girl turns 9 is the minimum age of marriage, like the minimum age that someone can get married at in all 4 schools of Sunni fiqh, and all of them agree that if she turns 9 and she menstruates, or she turns 9 experiences nocturnal emissions, or she turns 9 and she gets pubic hair, or if a jurist just says, yeah, I think she's mature enough, purely subjective opinion, she can be married.
Yeah,
so
There has always been a law of the land that has followed the fiqh to some degree. So whether
I'm not looking at the law of the land. I'm not looking at. I'm just looking at what the fiqh is. Okay, this is fiqh.
Yeah. But fiqh was never the law of the land in any place in the world. The laws are made on top of the fiqh. So what would happen in the case of the Abbasid Caliphate? They would have certain laws in the country that would be based on fiqh. So fiqh is, as you rightly call it, some of the people who argue over fiqh are like mental masturbation. But again, the law of the land is what we have to look at. Is there any law in any Islamic country in the history that we have in recorded history where the law of the land has described what you just described? So,
yes.
So out of 57 Islamic countries right now, which country has that law which you have just described? So you can go and pick some scholars' mental gymnastics and throw it in the face of the whole ummah, you know.
Okay, so you agree that the schools of law say this, but what you're saying is that what sort of the fact that some Muslim nations or Muslim societies also had secular law which didn't allow this, according to you, nullifies the fact that the overwhelming majority of the jurists from all different schools came to these sort of conclusions about the minimum age of marriage.
No. All Islamic majority countries say that their law is based on Islamic law. But when we go to a legal system, we have to draw a line. There has to be a line drawn in the sand. So whatever a jurist says, when it comes time to quantify that into law by parliament or by shura, there has to be a law saying 16 or 18 or 15. You have to draw a line somewhere. So I'm saying is, out of the 57 Islamic countries in the world right now, at least 50 of them say that their law is based on Sharia. Which country allows marriage at age 9? None. So you cannot take the mental gymnastics of an 1200-year-old text and then throw that in the face of the modern Islamic world, you know?
Well, okay, the counterpoint to that, offered by many Muslims that I've talked to, is they'll say, well, there's no such thing as a true Islamic State, and that none of them are good examples. You know, that's the issue. You have 57 things where they don't count it. They don't count the law. Like what we were talking before with Ahmad and Farhan. They say, well, it doesn't matter what the governments are doing. They're wrong. They're not following the straight path, and so forth. But let's. The point of the show was a different issue. I think that we're falling into old habits of just grilling Akber about stuff. Okay, so he can come on for yet a third show, and then we'll just talk about this all day long. But I want to get back.
I just want to make a really simple point. It doesn't need a counter-argument or anything. It's just basically, if people start to have sex with children, then they are at fault. If people can look to their religious doctrine and show that they're allowed to have sex with children, then it is the doctrine that's at fault.
No, it's the people who interpret their doctrine who are at fault.
It should be impossible, Akber. It should be impossible.
No.
Yeah,
it's not impossible.
Akber, ready? Do not have sex with anyone under the age of 18.
If I
have sex with a 9-year-old.
You know, if I read Leviticus, it says that if I have sex with an ox, I should be doing this, and if I have sex with the daughter of a priest, I should be killed. That's what Leviticus says. So if the people who don't follow Leviticus.
Yeah, but I didn't say Leviticus because I made the law of the Rationalizer and the law of the Rationalizer. But Surah 1, sentence 1 is do not have sex with anyone under the age of 18.
Yeah, okay.
Can you now twist that so that you are allowed to have sex with a 9-year-old?
No. I mean the 9-year-old thing. The 9-year-old thing is completely bizarre. But if you're saying the doctrine is wrong, then if I start to quote from Leviticus and Deuteronomy, you will be absolutely embarrassed.
Yeah. Because they're rubbish as well. I'm not a Christian.
Exactly.
I think they're rubbish as well. But the book of rationalization says no sex with anyone under 18. It cannot.
Unless two people under the age of 18 have sex, that's okay with you.
No, I just said no. I just gave you a clear statement. I didn't say that what sex before 18 is wrong. I gave you a statement that was sex under 18 is not permissible. That statement cannot be twisted to say, but if it's Sunday and she's got a pube, then it can be 9.
But are you aware that many Western states, including many states in the United States, have a law where there's a 2-year margin? So if you are 18 years and 6 months old, you can have sex with somebody who is 6 months under 18. Okay?
Yeah, but
so
that's
all
just
these
details.
laws.
Exactly. Of the law. What I'm saying is a clear statement that clearly says you can't be under 18 and have sex. Right? The Quran does not do this. The Quran does not do this. Right? The Hadiths and different people get different ages from the same material, and the issue is so important that it affects the rate of miscarriage in people all over the world. It's a very, very important subject, and God was really, really ambiguous, completely failed to be clear on what age.
Absolutely not, because hilum is the word puberty, which is the root of ihtilam as well. It is puberty, and if you go look up Wikipedia on age of consent, you will find a list of age of consent across all the countries in the world, you know? So the age of consent is what we're talking about here, and if some scholar has said something, that scholar is to be blamed, you know.
Well, I don't see how the law of that can override the law of God. Let's go back.
There are hadiths.
Okay. Now, guys, hold on. Well, I think this brings up a third axis to what I was talking before. I was saying that it's one thing to distance yourself from a lateral misbehavior. You know, in other words, you know, like every religion has this problem. Obviously, Islam is plagued by you know, the stereotype of the extremists. You know, the people beheading and doing things like that have sort of grabbed the microphone and claim to speak for the whole. You know, you can sympathize to a degree because nobody can stop someone from using the label. You know, it's a lateral misbehavior. You know, they're not. You know, if I belong to the religion and we worship penguins, I made a silly joke on a previous show how there's no penguin god because nobody had penguins in their culture. Let's say I belong to the penguin cult, and then someone else says, okay, well, I'm also a member of the penguin cult, and I like to just stab people for no reason, and I sell, you know, poison school milk to children and all kinds of silly things. You know, I say, well, hey, you know, stop using that label. But it's a lateral exchange. It doesn't mean that the penguin god is wrong, because there's just nothing I can do to stop that other than to denounce them. But then, like I said, the second, like in the case with the Catholic Church, if I say, well, that guy, the guy who calls himself a member of the penguin cult and goes around, you know, committing rapes and murders and things like this, he doesn't represent me. Oh, but he is the pastor at my penguin church, you know, or he is the bishop of my, you know, of my town, or the, you know, a cardinal of the penguin diocese, whatever. You know what I mean? If I accept him as an authority over me, that makes it, in my view, impossible for me to say with a straight face that he doesn't represent me, because then why don't I vote with my feet and leave? But the third axis of that is sort of diagonal axis to what the scriptures say, if there is a scripture in the religion. You know, if the Penguin Bible has a verse that could be interpreted to those kinds of individuals, and it is a matter of debate, then you have in the gray area by far.
If it can be interpreted that way, and it's the error of the author. It can be interpreted that way. It's the error of the author. I expect higher standards from an infallible, all-powerful entity.
Yeah, I would be inclined to agree. If I could look at a text and say, well, if you read it this way, it says, you know, if you read it literally, bad things happen. If you read it non-literally, good things could happen. I just don't think that's a good system, because most people are a bit blunt in how they...
But Rationalizer has not referred to a certain Quranic verse. So he has implied that it was a Quranic verse that is misinterpreted, but he hasn't referred to a Quranic verse. He may be referring to some hadiths, but he's not referring to a Quranic verse there.
That's fine, but Islam, we're talking about Islam, not Quran. And Islam is also the Sunnah, and the Sunnah that's recorded talks about Muhammad marrying...
You specifically said the all-powerful author of the book would not have written it in a way.
Of the doctrine. The all creator of Islam decided to do it. The Quran. Get my point first. Made the Quran and the Sunnah, and that's what people have got to follow.
Sunnah is the practice of the people who practiced Islam in the early Arabia, okay?
Yeah.
The Quran is the author. So if you want to blame this confusion over puberty on the Quran, give me the verse. If you can't give me the verse, don't blame the all-powerful author.
65:4.
Sorry?
65:4.
Okay.
Surat At-Talaq, verse 4. Basically, I'll even...
it's a long... We should do this another time. We should talk about
those who have...
But come back another time to talk about this. I really want to talk about this stuff, but this is a show about apostasy.
Yeah.
And we should
65:4 is about menopause, not puberty.
No. Those who have given up over menstruation, those who have not menstruated, and those who are pregnant. No.
Yeah,
menopause is those who have given up over menstruation.
Yeah.
Those who have not menstruated refers to young children.
Yeah. So if you want to blame the all-powerful, please come up with a verse before you blame the all-powerful.
This is referring to young people who have not yet menstruated.
No. who no longer expect menstruation. Yeah.
No, Akber, it's
No,
both.
that is Allah is none.
Sure, hang on a second. Akber, let me read it to you. It's both. It is people who no longer menstruate, but it says those who no longer expect menstruation, yes, that's menopause, amongst your women, their period of Ida is 3 months. And also for those who have not menstruated. That's 2 categories. Those who have stopped menstruating and those who have not menstruated.
Yeah, which means that the pregnancy is in effect and you're not menstruating. So this is that's not applying. Yes, you are right. It can be, yeah.
The next sentence refers to pregnancy. There's 3
and
categories here.
Yeah.
And for those who are pregnant, their term is until they give birth. So it's talking about 3 categories: post-menopausal, pregnant, and those who have not yet menstruated.
Okay, no, I'm sorry. We've been on this too long.
So we can pick this up later. But in all the translations that you have on Quran.com, none of them translated as premature adolescence. Yes, it can be twisted to mean that, but whoever twisted,
and that's the failure. That's the failure.
No.
The failure is on the part of the author who wrote something ambiguous enough to be able to twist it.
Well, I mean, it pains me to cut this off because it's a point. What Rash is saying is a point I make so often myself, and I agree completely.
One last thing.
We need to move on. I'm sorry if you don't.
The last word. Come on,
Okay. The American Constitution was written by some very well-meaning founding fathers, but it's been argued about for the last 300 years. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh man, I really want to come back to that, but no.
Okay, sorry. Okay.
Anyway, we had someone who wanted me to ask a question. He directed it towards Akber, but I'm going to ask it. I'm going to turn it into a more general question so that we can get kind of back on track to, the phenomenon of people leaving Islam. Here's what he said. He said, ask the Muslim fellow if he believes that Allah has predetermined everything from the beginning, which basically would mean that he is punishing people based on actions he set them up to do himself. Allow me to rephrase this so that more people can get in on the action, okay? Farhan and Ahmad did predestination and predetermination of actions factor into what you guys were taught when you were part of the faith? And then we'll go to Akber and ask his opinion first. But first I'd like to get Farhan and then Ahmad.
Absolutely it did, but it was not so much of a theological issue of qadr, which is the Islamic doctrine of predestination. It was more of the psychological reality of determinism. I am a determinist in all of my debates that I've had about hell and the problem of evil. So I've argued determinism, and I believe that everyone is determined to behave and be who they are. And so as a result, God could not possibly send anybody to hell. That was my argument.
What about you, Ahmad?
Well, actually, I didn't believe so. I didn't think that God has said everything beforehand. And but there was a very big contradiction in Iranian culture. The first one said that, there were 2 ideas which were believed in simultaneously by Iranians, as far as I know, and that is God has said everything, not said everything. Everything that happens is compatible with God's order and God's will. But then they said that you are responsible for what you do. It's a contradiction, but it's not as strong as just saying that God has said everything beforehand.
Okay. So Akber, what about you?
This is one of the deeply philosophical aspects of every religion, and Islam asks us to believe in wal qadri khairihi wa sharrihi, which means preordained destiny, whether it is good or bad. And Farhan hit the nail on the head when he says that it is one of the biggest psychological crutches that a person could have, in the sense that God has given you free will, but when something good or something bad happens, you live with it. So if you see the psychological ills and social ills, human being absolutely has a free will, and if we were to determine, if we were to interpret qadr as preordained, then we would not be responsible for our actions. It's a logical contradiction. So we have our free will, but whenever something is going to happen in the future, we say inshallah, and whenever something happens in the past that was wrong, we say God must have. It is a very, very strong. It keeps a person sane, to put it in. And you being a psychologist, Farhan, you can dwell on this a bit more, you know?
Yeah, sure. I definitely want to get into it. There's a big question in psychology and neuroscience about the question is, what is free will? And basically the argument that I always give is, okay, each and every one of us has absolutely no control or no choice over whether we would be male or female, what part of the world we are born in, what time period we are born in, what genes we inherit, what brain chemistry we have at any moment, what experiences we would have as a child and adolescent, the factors of a child and adolescent who are not physically or psychologically grown enough to understand what's going on in the world. And during that period, we're having numerous experiences that are being absorbed into the unconscious mind that impact the conscious mind of the adult in the future. So you have all of this, a plethora of determinism in which we have no choice or control over at all. There's no control or choice over this, and it impacts us psychologically. So hypothetically, if you were born as Adolf Hitler, or if you were born as Abu Jahl, with his brain chemistry, his genetics, his upbringing, and his environment, and his time period, you would have done everything that he did. So this is determinism, and this is what neuroscience can further prove. This is what psychology, nature versus nurture, proves, that you're heavily influenced by a lot of different factors. So I would definitely argue determinism in that sense. So the question is, what is free will? Philosophers define it in a lot of different ways. Daniel Dennett is one of the more popular skeptics who says that it's our ability to avoid certain circumstances when we're presented with them. I'd like to think of free will as that there's no such thing as free will, but rather the amount of determined limitations that we have are expanding. So, for example, 100 years ago, there was no such thing as, I don't know, Coca-Cola or Pepsi. And now those are options available in the deterministic realm of things. So there's no free will. There's just an expansion of choices in a determined construct. That's the psychological way of looking at it. But theologically, we're talking about God being omniscient, meaning all-knowing, meaning that God knows what you're going to do before you're ever going to do it. And a matter of fact, before you were even born, God knows what you were going to do.
And also omnipotent, so therefore could have made it any other way.
Right, exactly. Hence the problem of evil, right? If God is all-powerful, and if God is all-knowing, and God is omnibenevolent, then why evil? That's the classical.
Yeah. So what is the role of the superego in psychology that you see in controlling free will? So as the superego evolves, in psychological terms, it puts some brakes, or it forces people to make certain decisions in certain ways. Mm-hmm. So would you not say that one of the benefits of religion is that it developed a superego to a degree where you have more control over your actions from that point of view, and you're not subject to your chemical balances or your instincts alone?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's environmental. That's the nurturing aspect of the ego construct, the id, superego, and ego that Freud talked about. But I think that it's a lot more complicated than what it seems. It's always all of the different factors fueling the current perception and choice making that the agent is supposedly making. So so let me give you an example. If you were born as a Muslim and you are emotionally attached to your identity as a Muslim. You have an emotional attachment to your identity as a Muslim. You were brought up as a Muslim. You went to the mosque with your parents. You saw how much joy it brought to your parents. You saw how you got to know and develop relationships in the mosque. You saw how it built the community, it inspired the community, it brought the community together. The emotional attachment begins to develop within the person's subconscious and unconscious mind. And so if I come to that person who's emotionally attached to their identity as a Muslim, and I come to them with any argument, it doesn't matter what it is, they're going to react adversely to whatever I have to say. Spontaneously and impulsively, they're going to react adversely.
Not necessarily. I mean, we've had a good conversation here, and things are said, and we listen to them. So yes, your instinct is to react immediately, but then your ego calms you down, your super ego, and says, no, it's not the way to react. So there is a concept of being able to suppress a person's instincts, and religion should help, or any kind of faith should help to develop those checks and balances. And as you know, I was brought up in the Ahmadiyya faith, and I have actually left it for Islam. You know, so there does come a point where you actually, there is something more than just a sum of our chemical balances, I would say. You know.
No, I think that there's definitely more than just chemical imbalances. There's both nature and nurture, genetics and the nurturing that you get. So, for example, you could have had negative experiences in the Ahmadiyya community, and those negative experiences in the Ahmadiyya community were influencing you in some way to get out. You see what I'm saying?
Well, that's the Ahmadiyya argument that they always put forward. Why couldn't it have been my research and not my experiences, you know?
It's always both. But that's what.
But then again, what if you hadn't had the experience of doing the research?
Yep, agreed. Yeah, agreed.
But it's also what in social psychology we call confirmation bias too. We're looking for the information that confirms our own biases. So, for example, if I grew up Roman Catholic and I don't like the Catholic Church, so I'm going to find reasons to get out of it, intellectual reasons, albeit.
It sounds a little bit too simplistic to me, but that's fine.
Yeah, no, this is interesting. I just remembered you were raised in the Ahmadiyya sect and you left. So as long as we're asking them why they left Islam, why did you leave the Ahmadiyya sect?
Yeah, so as we said in our last show, to me it appeared to be lacking a philosophical foundation, and it was purely a family business, or what I call a cult, which has some connotations that are not very good. But it seemed to be lacking in those fundamentals, in the sense that any kind of scholarly activity is prohibited, except for the family of the founder. And for the last 40, 50, 60 years, they've been completely what I call intellectually bankrupt. They've not contributed anything to Islam or anything to the world from an intellectual angle. So I said, what is this thing I'm stuck in, you know? And it has become a business. It might have started as a good intention by the founder, but it has degenerated into a cult-like business. Farhan can add more.
You know what's interesting is, I don't know if you guys know this, Akber, Chaudhry, and myself, we were both brought up as Ahmadis. We were both born and raised in families that followed the Ahmadiyya movement, or Ahmadiyya Muslim community as they refer to themselves. Both of us decided to leave it. I became a Sunni Muslim about in 1998-99, and I remained a Sunni Muslim for about 10 years. I think Akber Chaudhry Sahab, you converted to Sunni or traditional Islam, 2001?
2001, yep, you're right, yep.
Okay. Okay. The only reason I know that because I saw your show on Gin and Tonic.
Oh, okay.
before this one, I watched it. And I heard
and if you remember, you and I met in Washington, and we met in Toronto at one time.
2004. Yeah, and I remember those meetings very well. And it's good to see you again, and it's good to see that you're doing well.
Very good.
But yeah, both of us were brought up in the Ahmadiyya community, and I'll agree with Chaudhry Sahib in the sense that, look, I've offered to debate. I debate very publicly. I've offered to debate them publicly, and they refuse to. They'll run their own literatures, they'll run their own programs, but they refuse to confront people who want to debate the issues. Chaudhry Sahib, I think you've had a debate with Ansar Raza, which is
I've had three.
Yeah. And I've tried to have debates and dialogues. I know Nabil Qureshi, who's a Christian now. I don't know if you've heard of him.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, he's tried to debate, and I just don't think that they're willing. And the way that I look at it is like, if you're not willing to confront people who are leaving your community, as far as I'm concerned, you talk about jihad of the pen. Your pen has run out of the ink. It literally.
Well, you know, now the founder of the Ahmadiyya sect, he claimed that he was receiving revelations, right? Is that accurate?
He did.
Now you see, but don't the Ahmadiyya follow fellowship? Don't they have access to the scriptures that say that Muhammad is the final prophet and he's the last person to receive the revelations?
That's a long debate. Yes, they do.
So I mean, that right there would be, I think, a deal breaker for me, because way back when I was religious, I was a real stickler for doctrinal issues. That, you know, for me in retrospect seems.
Yeah, the problem is it's only hadiths that 100% clearly say there will be none after me. In the Quran, it only says that he is. Don't tell me. He's Ratam. Ratam means the seal of the prophets. So therefore, it could mean I am the affirmer, or I have come to seal off the law. That doesn't mean that more messages couldn't come and tell you the same law. It just means he's come to seal it off, or he's come to approve what's come before. If it used akhir, if it was last, I am the last of the prophets. But he said Ratam, which is seal, which could mean something else. But let's not go into that. I just wanted to show off.
Yeah, no, that's exactly the Ahmadiyya argument, that if you look at a seal, is the seal the actual thing in your hand, or is the seal the wax that is sealing the envelope? What is the seal? So they think that the seal is what is in the hand, which can make more stamps. And we say, will there be more stamps? No, there's only one. There's only one person to come after Muhammad. But anyways, that's a story.
It sounds like Ahmad was trying to be not Ahmad who's in the call. Ahmad, the guy who started the Ahmadiyya sect.
Yeah.
It sounds like the guy who started the Ahmadiyya sect. He was trying to become the Paul of Islam. You know what I mean? It's like you had Jesus, who was supposed to be the pinnacle of Christianity, and then you had this other guy, Paul, who changed whatever he wanted to change. And several of our Muslim guests in the past have pointed out how full of crap Christians are for following Paul instead of Jesus, when in cases where he contradicts Jesus, and Jesus is supposed to be God incarnate or whatever. But it's like Paul ran like the gates of Christian ijtihad were closing, and he ran and he slid under it like an action film, and it just barely slammed shut. So he's somehow got his foot in the door just in time to overwrite things said by Jesus himself. But then the founder of the Ahmadiyya sect, he ran the same, and he just got stuck under that door as it was sliding down, and it just cut him in half. That's what
Yeah, so this guy was not very of an intellectual bent. If you read his books, they don't make much sense at all. So I would not take that analogy. And also he was 1200, 1300 years after Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it's very long. I have my own views on who the Paul of Islam was, but I will keep them to myself for now, you know.
Okay, so welcome to the show, Muhammad Ahmed. Thank you for joining us.
So, in my case, I'm an Egyptian, as you probably know. I did consider myself to be a moderate Muslim until I witnessed the rise of the Salafism. You know that the atheist movement is picking up some really healthy numbers, and I reckon that in the past 2 years, in my own estimate, that the number of atheists in Egypt have increased to almost 1 million.
Really?
In just in almost 1 of 2 years, I've met countless of them. At least 40% of the atheist population now were Salafists, and some percentage of them were jihadists. And I'm looking down at the pictures, I'm looking at the profiles, and I've seen how this extreme transition from being extremist to just, you know, I don't want any religion in my life. I'm done with Islam. I'm not going to support this religion anymore. This religion is destroying our lives. It has always wrecked our lives. It has wrecked the politics. It has just had a very catastrophic effect on our society. And people are now in Egypt is realizing that now by the rise of the Muslim Brotherhood. They have seen they have been considered all the time to be some sort of angels, the men of God, you know, the people that you can trust. We have seen nothing from the Islamic front but betrayal, but lies, but violence. So people are now beginning to realize that there is some serious moral gap between what is considered right and what is considered Islamic. And that's, in my opinion, it's good, because I did realize that at 2010. And as I began to wonder why there is this moral gap in a religion that I always considered a very moral one, I began to research, and I was face to face with the issue of God. And as this issue got resolved, as it was clear to me that the God of Islam is just not a married figure.
This is a shame. I'm going to have to let you go. Stay safe. I know that things in Egypt are looking pretty dicey. Keep your head down. And if there is an enclave of growing atheists in Egypt, that's a good sign. But I suggest you run.
That's possible.
You remember, you don't need to run faster than the Salafists. You just need to run faster than the Egyptian Christians. Right. Please take care. It's a shame we had the audio difficulties, but we'll see you hopefully again in a future show. Salam. Yeah,
Actually,
I wanted to, we finally got someone from me. Our next caller will be from Syria, and then it just will not connect. Watch. You'll hear the mortar fire in the background, and that's why we won't be able to hear him. Goodness gracious. Klingschor, you were there in the after show of the last episode. We were talking with Ali about what's going on in Egypt and Morsi.
Yeah, everyone's arming themselves.
Yeah, it's really getting crazy. I won't dwell on politics for too long because people get upset with me when I talk politics on a religion show. But you know what really? I mean, the U.S. does a lot of stupid things in the region, but it just goes to show that we can't win either way. Because when the elections happened, we hugged the ankle of the Egyptian voter and said, "Please don't vote for the Brotherhood." And they're like, "Screw you, we'll vote for whoever we want to." And then Morsi gets in power. He says the judiciary can't touch him. And now you have people saying, "Oh well, he's clearly an American agent. He was clearly put there by the CIA." I mean, there are people literally saying this. We just can't win. Jeez. Anyway, so. I mean, hopefully he comes back. It's a shame. Okay, so
why don't we let go of Ahmad and get in the next?
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Ahmad, for your contribution. We're gonna rotate a new guest. Take care, and you're welcome back anytime.
Yes, thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you.
Cheers, salam. Okay, I'm gonna bring in the next two. I'm gonna bring in. Okay, yeah, we lost a lot of people during the technical difficulties. I think a lot of people thought that we were just off, but, oh boy. I think the people watching this later on YouTube won't appreciate just what a trial we went through to get that.
Yes. But like Muhammad Ahmed said from Egypt, there is a moral failure in some aspects, and at some point we would like to get into that as well. that the mainstream Muslim clergy hasn't come to terms with feminism, hasn't come to terms with women's liberation, hasn't come to terms with a lot of things, and they have some fast growing up to do, you know.
Rafi and Toyer, are you both with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, great, wonderful.
Verses to abrogate as well.
Okay.
Go on, carry on. Sorry, back to apostasy. Sorry.
So we have our friends, both from Africa, but not from Egypt or Syria or any place cool like that. So I should just kick them both out. No. Thank you both for joining us.
Where in Africa?
I'm from Cape Town, South Africa.
Oh,
cool.
Hi, Toya.
And Rafi's profile says he's from Uganda.
Oh wait, that's fake. I'm from the UK actually.
Oh, kick him out.
Troll. It's Oliver.
Yeah, Oliver.
It's Oliver. Anyway, sorry.
No, I used to be a bit more paranoid, but now there's so many of us, I don't care.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll go in alphabetical order, starting with Rafi. Tell us your deconversion story, and then we'll go to Toyer.
So I would say like I left Islam at about 19, and it started when I was about 16, and I went to college, and for some reason I just knew I wanted to study science, like I did, and it just blew me away. The answers that science gave you were so much superior and so much more detailed and precise, and just their way of thinking and approaching a problem. It's not, oh, we don't understand this, therefore God did it. It was more, we don't understand this, let's work on it and find out a rational explanation. So that sort of opened my mind to new ideas. I was still like not believing evolution and all that stuff, but I just found it more superior, the scientific explanations. And then later on, about a year later, I found Christopher Hitchens. And at first I hated him, but as I listened to him more and more, I was like, this guy makes more sense. Like, I mean, you have to remember, this is the time when the whole, like, Muslim all over the world writing over cartoons and all this is happening. And he was like, religion is evil. Religion makes people do bad things. And I could see it every day in the news. And, you know, he was vindicated every single day. Every single day there would be some big problem, and the main cause would be religion. So that kind of opened my eyes, yeah.
What about Farhan?
Yeah, Toya, same to you. Tell us your life in 30 seconds then.
My life in 30 seconds.
There you go.
30 seconds.
I was brought up Muslim and been so for 40 years now. When I was about 6 years old, I went to Muslim school. Alims told me I was great. Studied heaps at Darul Uloom in Johannesburg. Got beatings every day there because I smoked girls. And then I got married in 2003. I had a daughter, or still have a daughter. And then I think when I started questioning religion and so forth was when the tsunamis happened. I thought, what the fuck is going on? Can God be so cruel? So many people wiped out, not give a fuck about it. Sorry about my language, sorry.
It's fine. Guests can swear.
Okay, but then I started going on to YouTube and trying to confirm my religion and trying to be a good Muslim and so forth. And
yeah.
The more I searched and more, and in 2010 I stumbled upon CA, the Council of Ex-Muslims of Britain, that forum, and got hooked and left. I jumped on the bandwagon, I guess. and lost my faith there.
So is your wife still a Muslim now?
Yeah.
And is she like, you know, not she says she's a Muslim. I mean, is she properly a Muslim?
No. Very,
Is she a
very,
Muslim
very.
or is she a Muslim?
No, a Muslim.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no.
does she pray, for example?
Excuse me?
Does she pray?
No.
No. So does she like fast?
No.
Nothing.
We do nothing. None of the sort.
But does she still consider herself to be a Muslim?
Yes.
And do you still consider yourself to be a Muslim?
No.
What is the difference between you and your wife?
Nothing. Nothing.
So are you a Muslim or is she an apostate?
Does she believe in Allah?
Yes, she does, and it is in her heart.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it stays.
How many Muslims are there in South Africa, and how do they get along with everyone else? How are they perceived generally?
No, very well. I mean, there's no like in the Middle East or anything like that. It's very secular here in South Africa, and the Muslims are very kind with everybody. So there's no
not the tension that exists in Europe.
There's no tension at all. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
South Africa.
European Muslims should just move to South Africa.
No. So, question for Rafi is then, are you aware that Adolf Hitler's Nazi Germany was a very scientific society. So if science had all the answers, then Nazi Germany would be a moral society. They were very accomplished scientifically, you know.
Can I say, hammers don't have all the answers, do they? And screwdrivers. The hammers and screwdrivers have all the answers. They
No, wait, I never said.
No,
sorry,
they're just tools to do things with, and that's what science is. Science merely helps you to understand the facts and predict what will be the outcome. If you give it a certain input, what the output will be. That's what science does. If you decide to go and kill millions of Jews because of that science hasn't got any morality. Science is just the facts. That's it. It doesn't matter if they're scientific.
Germany was motivated by a very anti-scientific or scientifically contradicted ideology concerning race and the Aryans and conspiracy theories about communists and Jews. So science was being used by people who were unscientific, or people who were contradicting science in their views and opinions.
Okay,
they were great lovers of industrial technology and then had pseudoscience in almost every other field.
Akber, let me just quickly answer you. I never said that science has all the answers, but it's the approach to questions of science that are like, it's, okay, we don't understand it yet, let's work on it. I mean, what's the alternative? What does religion offer? Religion just says magic. It just happens. We don't need to worry about it. Whereas scientists, like one person will spend their entire life just looking at a small part of the universe. Whereas religion just says, don't worry, everything, it doesn't matter. It's after when you die, that's the real life. This life, you don't need to be interested.
So, I mean, again, I think the theme of this whole show has been that there are certain ill-educated scholars who peddle this kind of stories. The Quran says repeatedly, ponder, think and ponder. So thinking and pondering is not un-Islamic. It is very Islamic. It is certain cultures and certain professions of clergy within them that have started to spread these things because they're not well paid or they're not well educated. Now, my question was, for example, eugenics. Have you guys heard about eugenics?
Yes.
And if you look at eugenics, it is scientifically a very good thing to do, and that is what Nazi Germany was practicing. They were actually had a very strong rational explanation for eugenics that they were following, but it is immoral. We, human
Yes,
beings
but
would like...
Islam does not tell you it's immoral. Eugenics didn't even exist then. Where in the Quran it says don't be following eugenics. It says it is silent. Religion is silent on the matter.
Can I just finish?
Part of Islamic
let Akber wrap up what he was saying.
So eugenics is the result of eugenics, which is a society that is uniform and very intelligent and very attractive, is a good place to be from a scientific point of view. But being human being, whether we are disabled or whether we are young or we are old or whether we are born with deformity, we get a certain status as a human being within the moral framework of every religion, whether Islam or anything else.
I'm sorry, Akbar, but to say that people, if I understood you correctly, you said that like if we're beautiful and so on, then we're scientifically better. That you could not be more wrong. It is diversity.
I think
we need disabled people. We need disabled people. Without disabled people, the future of the human race is certainly doomed. We need people to be mutated. We need people to be different from the norm. Because if anything drastic comes that affects most of the people on the earth due to their DNA, it's going to be the minority that survive. For example, if people with Down
AIDS, it's like AIDS. There's actually a minority in Africa who are now immune to AIDS. If evolution took its course, they would survive.
If Down syndrome people could perfectly reproduce, have more Down syndrome babies, and they could reproduce, and so on and so on, and then some disease come about that only killed people without the extra chromosome, we'd all die, and there'd be an evolutionary step. So you cannot look at a disabled person and say, evolutionary or scientifically, that they are worth less. That is not true.
So I think there's confusion here between eugenics and the diversity of the gene pool. So yes, we do need diversity in the gene pool to be competitive as a species. But eugenics was a very well accepted science before World War II. If you look up its history, many distinguished scientists, it is to create a superior race with all the genetic diversity within that race. So you can be blonde and blue-eyed and 6 foot tall, 6.5 foot tall, and still be genetically diverse enough to be able to withstand. But
Akbar, can I quickly add a point here? See, eugenics was a misuse of science. Same with religion can be misused. I mean, suicide bombing is a misuse of Islam.
Exactly.
But the difference is, nowhere in science it says, if people don't believe in evolution, find them wherever you are and kill them. But in the Quran, there is specific injunction of violence, of all sorts of immoralities that we know. Like, when you read the Quran in translation, you can feel that this is not the kind of society you want to live in. I mean, Surah 9:5, kill them. Surah 9:29, kill them. Surah 4:34, beat your wives. It keeps going on and on and on. Nowhere in its science it says, kill a bunch of people. I mean, people will misuse science. They will always misuse science. But nowhere in science does it say, if people don't accept science, kill them, or you must convince everyone science is the best, or, you must pay money to science, or you must fast because science says so. It doesn't work that way.
So I think I think most of the information you've got is from these Islamophobic sites. Verse 9:5 applies directly to people who break a treaty, treaty. And just let me finish. And you will also remember the verse in Surah Baqarah that says, an eye for an eye and an ear for an ear, but whoever forgives is good for them. So you cannot take a verse in isolation and say it is brutal. If you do that, then every scripture, I cannot think of any scripture except the New Testament.
Yes,
which is
all scriptures are man-made. Except you just said except the New Testament. So the New Testament is superior to the Quran.
Well, because the New Testament doesn't have a claim to be a divine scripture. It is just narrative written down by the disciples of Jesus on how he lived, you know?
Well,
I would point out, okay, we'll move on to this, but I'd just like to point out that the overwhelming majority of classical scholars considered the ayat as-sayf, the verse of the sword, to have abrogated, to be the final verse in a series of verses concerning warfare, and to have abrogated all previous verses to the extent that all Muslims were henceforth commanded to spread Islam through military expansion.
Absolutely rubbish. I mean,
what do you mean absolutely rubbish?
No. If I were to agree what Klingschor is saying now, you are dehumanizing me and you are delegitimizing a great human civilization. No civilization. Okay, hold on. See, no civilization could have survived this long had it been based on principles to indiscriminately kill anyone and anybody. So if you believe that Islam says, if you believe that, hold on.
And it hasn't survived. It's dying.
Okay, well, okay. Thank you very much. Then. No, why are we having a decent conversation here when you are dehumanizing and delegitimizing a whole civilization?
I'm not. I did no such thing. You said, I'm not saying that Islam says kill all people. I didn't say that.
There is no human civilization in human history that has urged or advocated the indiscriminate slaughter of people as you are. This
is a straw man logical fallacy. What I said was, you said that the verse to
9.5. What's 9.5?
Well, you said it was only in reference to a broken contract. When I was saying that, with the overwhelming, and this is a fact, right? This is, you can't argue. Ancient Islamic tradition tells us, this is what the classical scholars have all said, all the way from Ibn Abbas, Ibn Kathir to As-Suyuti. They said that this ayat as-sayf, the verse of the sword, abrogates all previous verses on the matter of conflict, and says that Muslims should expand Islam militarily. And I'm not saying that they should kill. What the system is, this was the classical system of Islam as it expanded, as was formulated by the classical jurists. You expand Islam militarily, and all unbelievers, right, they either pay the jizya, convert to Islam, or die. And that was the rule. That is how Islamic civilization expanded, and we can see this again and again. And for example, Al-Mamun, for example, when he was on a military expedition, he noticed that he had some pagans in his kingdom, in the Abbasid Caliphate, and he said to them, like, because that was the rule, because if you're a Christian or a Jew, if you're Ahl al-Kitab, you can live under jizya or convert to Islam, but if you refuse them, you die. And if you're pagan, you get no choice at all. He noticed the pagan community, and he said to them, you've got to convert or die or pay the jizya. And
hold on. You cannot just simply roll over history like that. Jizya is for those people who don't pay zakah. The Muslims pay zakah to run the state. And zimma, the word zimma means responsibility. The state, okay. So all these Islamophobic people, they have twisted these words into dehumanizing Islam, and I'm not going to sit here and take it. Okay.
Guys, you two stop a second. Can I just a minute, Akber? Because everyone just calm down for a minute, because it's very clear that we all like Akber, and we don't want to upset him. And it's okay. No, it's okay. But we're not trying to upset you. But I understand that when someone says something that you infer as being a stereotype of everyone to whom you associate, that you can take it personally and so on. But if we cut out all of the surrounding stuff about jizya and everything, I think that Klingschor said too many things in one point. What the very, very core of his point is simply, it's not him saying that verse 9.5 and that was abrogated and that you should just go out and spread Islam by force. It's the classical tafsirs, it's the jurists that are saying it. What he's saying is, he's not saying that this is true. He says, if you look at all of the scholars throughout classical history, they all say that this verse overrides the previous verses. That was what his point was. He wasn't dehumanizing you. He was saying, look what they say.
There is no evidence. What Mr. Klingschor has been doing so far is saying the jurists have said this, the jurists have said this. So I say, to hell with the jurists. Either you quote the jurist and quote his popularity. If you're following a scientific method, what you do is you quote a previous work and you say, this is the reputation of the previous work that was done by Einstein or Newton or somebody. You cannot just throw out saying jurists say this and all jurists agreed. This is not a proper conversation then.
Did you want evidence? Because I can give you academic sources for my claim. Was it a matter of evidence or are you...
One moment. Toyer has informed me that it's really quite late where he is, so we're going to say goodbye to him. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Toyer.
And you're welcome back anytime.
No, I'm not saying that I need the academic reference right here from you. It is not a case of...
Academic references have nothing to do with science.
Exactly.
Science has nothing to do with who said what. It's what the person who said it can prove. That's what science is. What a jurist said is never, ever a scientific approach, just quoting them. All that Klingschor is saying, if you say you disagree with all of the jurists, then you disagree with them. Klingschor's just saying that all of the jurists agree with each other.
No, but
I think that's fine.
No, I'm not. It is not an issue of trust or reference. It is a style of argument. It is a style of argument where if I start to quote from all the people who were beheaded in the Tower of London and why they were beheaded, and give that as a British thing, that would not be correct. So you have to take things in their historical context. You have to take things in local context, and how Mr. Klingschor has been arguing is every time he runs into a corner, he brings up this jurists have said this. So, well, what do I do then? I just...
to be fair, if the jurists carried no weight in Islam, there would be no point in him doing that.
Yeah.
But the very fact that so many Muslims around the world give a lot of credence to these jurists, that is the problem.
So you have to look at the practice that... Okay,
wait. Let Akbar come back to that, and then we'll go to Rafi.
Yeah, let me ask that. If you want empirical evidence, I mean, I can go pull up a jurist from any source. If you want empirical evidence, look at the 4 great Islamic civilizations in Spain, in Turkey, in India, and in Baghdad, the great empires of Islam, and tell me whether any single one of them did what you claim the jurist said to do.
Yes, yes, they did.
Okay,
yes, they did. Al-Andalus, the Moors, the Morabitun, what were the monotheists, the Almohads, the Al-Muwahidun? They were invading holy war to battle against the Christians. In the Mughal Empire, what was that famous king, Orzarang or something? He called his wars against the Hindus jihad. Yes, like heresy, like declaring a jihad. Like, I mean, the Umayyads.
So, hold on. Very, very, very dishonest and very selective, because the father of Aurangzeb and the grandfather of Aurangzeb and the great-grandfather of Aurangzeb, okay? So they were all some of the most liberal Islamic emperors ever to rule India. So why
I agree.
Why don't you take things in perspective? Why do you cherry pick? Why do you cherry pick those things and you twist them? That's not honest conversation. That's not honest conversation.
No. You just said to me, you said any of these empires at any point do this, and I just gave you examples where yes, they do. I wasn't.
Take empire as a whole.
I was just responding to your points.
Okay, Akbar, I will take an empire as a whole. Okay.
Yeah,
so you said Turkey, right? So in 1776, when America just formed, America had nothing to do with the Crusades. America did nothing to the Muslims, but the Turkish government said it's okay to take American slaves. So the Americans went to the Turkish people, like their ambassadors, and they said, "Why are you doing this to us? We never invaded Muslims. We were never in the Crusade. We're just a new country."
Not yet.
Well, they weren't even. Yeah, they were barely a country basically. And the Ottomans just said to them, Well, we have the right to take slaves because Allah gives us permission. You're unbelievers, we can do whatever we want to you. So this is the official sanctioned foreign policy of the Ottoman government. So you want an example, there is one.
Very good.
Can I elucidate my point?
At the same time,
when someone makes a point towards Akber, he should be able to respond every time.
Oh, great.
And this was going on at the same time that the Americans were taking slaves as well. So.
No, America is not even a country yet. It's barely a country.
Well, I mean, but his
were slaves being shipped from Africa. Yeah.
Yeah, his point still stands, I think. But at the same time, I don't think
so Islam does allow slavery.
Off the hook because the early Americans were using their own religious beliefs to.
We're not comparing it. We're not having a game of let's compare civilizations.
It's okay to enslave slavers.
Of empires that acted this way towards non-Muslims in this kind of aggressive expansion, and we've been giving examples. But allow me to elucidate my point. Okay, this is just simply the point, because originally it went back to you saying that these verses in the Quran were only revealed in the context of the specific one you mentioned, in the context of some non-Muslims broke contract with Muslims, and that was the context of the Bible. And my point, to re-elucidate, is simply this. Right? According to the majority of classical scholars, the majority of classical
there we go,
Muslim exegetes.
There we go.
Wait. Please listen. Majority of classical Muslim exegetes considered the to abrogate all previous verses and to be a mandate to expand Islam militarily across the world, and this was put into practice by the Umayyads and the Abbasids, and ever since, all the way up until the Ottomans, there has been Imam Shafi formulated the doctrine that you should wage complete war against all non-believers simply because they are non-believers. This was a doctrine that he promulgated, for example. And this tradition of holy war against all non-believers to expand Islam has been with Islam as a holy war tradition since its beginning all the way up until the modern day. And the doctrine got to the point where it was generally agreed that every 10 years, there had to be a jihad against unbelievers. This is not Islamophobia. This is not Robert Spencer. This is
fantastic.
Brill's Encyclopedia of Islam. Right? So that's my point. That was my only point. I'm not saying.
No, all right. That's it. Yeah, you made.
What was that? Okay, so my question to you is, what was the religious sanction behind the Crusades, where armies were raised in Europe to go and kill people in the Middle East?
Much like with your slavery example, it's a valid counterexample, but it would only really matter if anyone here was defending Christianity.
Yeah. Exactly. So I'm not trying to. Okay. I'm not trying to defend.
Let him come back. I
agree.
I'm not trying to defend. I'm not trying to defend. I'm not trying to defend the Ottoman Empire here. I'm not trying to defend any Muslim king or scholar. All I'm saying is, if we want to have a rational discourse, put things in their proper perspective in history. Don't cherry pick. Look at how the Crusades were happening. Look at how slavery was happening. And in that day and age, put things into context. Don't be a Robert Spencer and take something out of the 8th century or the 10th century and extrapolate it to the 21st century and say,
No, Klingschor, wait. I understand what Akber's saying. Akber's saying, I think what Akber is saying is, don't just look at the Turks and say they were enslaving people, that's bad. And he's not saying, but Americans were enslaving people, so enslaving is okay. What it seems to me that Akber is saying is that if you look at the whole picture of people going around enslaving each other and everything, there may be a valid reason that they were attacking those people and then taking them as slaves. I don't know what. I mean, I'd like to know what it is. Are you saying
that people exploited, or manipulated Islamic tradition to justify their own military pursuits? And
Akber, what's your view on the incident with Banu al-Harith?
Okay, so sorry, my view on what? Sorry.
On Banu al-Harith. Do you know the story of Banu al-Harith?
What's that?
No, I'm not. It's not.
The story of Banu al-Harith. The story of Banu al-Harith is that Muhammad sent one of his followers to Banu al-Harith, and gave them a number of days. He left the army outside the town and had his representative go in and say to them, you have this many days to accept Islam, and if they don't accept it, then go in and kill them. And then after a number of days they accepted Islam, and in another account of the story also goes on to say that the leaders of Banu al-Harith were brought before Muhammad, and Muhammad said, if you had not accepted Islam, I'd have had your head at your feet, or something like that. Are you familiar with that story?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the argument I'm trying to make here is that if you are trying to justify in the 21st century that Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was a bloodthirsty tyrant, then sorry, you are dehumanizing my whole reason for existence, because I cannot go and say Jesus alayhi salam was so and so, was a bastard like the Jews say, or I can go and say that Moses was this or that. So now let's go back to this story. You have to remember that Muhammad was a king of Arabia, or that part of the world, towards the end of his life in Medina. And each and every incident or war, I have researched them myself just to be sure that what I'm talking about. At the time of the war of Ahzab, the Khandaq, the trench, the war of the trench, Islam was this much away from being wiped out. So there was a war of Badr, then there was the war of Uhud, and then the war of the trench. Islam was this much away. And if all the tribes that had come from all of Arabia around Medina had succeeded in breaking through that trench, Islam would have been wiped out. And here is a person, and during that war, there was a lot of treachery on behalf of the tribes. They were always aligning with each other and making deals and then breaking deals and so on. Every one of the subsequent punishments after Ahzab or after these things have been due to tribal treaties. Nobody in history can say that Muhammad broke a treaty. If you can prove this from a valid historical argument that he broke a treaty and went bloodthirstily after a tribe or an army that had broken a treaty, then I would accept your point, you know?
Rash and Kling, once again, it's you guys going fisticuffs with Akber, but
all right. Why don't we
try to get it back on the. I really think that both sides have exhausted their quivers at this point. Let's go back.
I have a new question.
Okay, yeah. I hear the word something new, and I jump at it. What is your question, Rafi?
So Akber,
Rafi, just 1 second. Akber, all I want is a yes or a no. Were Banu al-Harith part of the Battle of the Trench?
No, they were a tribe that had broken a treaty.
Okay, so
I'm not going to go further.
Yeah.
Okay, Akbar, let me ask you something. Okay, so you've talked about all these battles and stuff. So let me ask you this. So these people who lived with Muhammad, they saw him. They knew Arabic better than any of people alive today. Why did they all, including his own tribe, including his own grandfather, reject him as a fraud? And wanted to kill him.
Yeah, and this shows the character of the person, that he stuck to it despite tremendous opposition because he wanted to believe in the one God. It also shows the character of the person that against all odds, he succeeded in getting rid of multiple gods within the Arab tribes, and he united the Arab kingdom. He was a king.
By killing thousands of people. Like,
here's the thing, Rafi. Can I interject really here? The thing is, if you look at Muhammad just as, you see, because, and I don't mean any offense, Akber, but from my perspective, there was no supernatural interference. From my perspective, he was an ambitious man who really, against incredible odds, did build up what would eventually, become an incredibly powerful civilization. So he really does have quite a rags to riches story. And there's always at least something, I would say, to be admired, or at least to be respected by anyone who experiences a meteoric rise, whether you respect what they do once they get it, whether they're responsible or whether they like when sometimes reading about historical characters, it's like reading life story of someone like MC Hammer, where they fritter away their fortune. You're like, well, you worked so hard and you got to this position. That's what you did with all that power or influence. But the thing is, Rafi, you're saying, he got there by killing his way. The issue is with a lot of the laws that apply to the Islamic civilization, with his attitude towards warfare. Was he really that much better or worse than any contemporary general? Was he really better or worse than Alexander the Great? I mean, was he in terms of his ambition and his methodology and the ruthlessness? Was he? The problem, I think, isn't that he was bad for his time, or even well into the Middle Ages. Things were much the same.
No, well, this is my point too. That he was just an ordinary man who said that he's a prophet as well, because he wanted eternal fame. He didn't just want power in his life. He wanted to, like, I personally think he was impressed by Jesus, and he wanted to be like Jesus, like where billions of people worship him and all that kind of thing. But not worship, but look up to him.
I would say more Moses, though. He seemed like
who wouldn't like that?
He seemed to be a big Moses fanboy.
This was a big idea in history, where people said, well, death is the end. What the best way to be immortal is to be remembered.
Yeah, this is a very valid point, Rafi, that you're making, and now we're having a good discourse here, because if you don't want to believe in the spirituality of Muhammad, that's fine. But if you want to denigrate him as an evil character out of history, that is simply not true. So, like he said, Atheismo said, yes, you have a right to not accept him as a spiritual person, but you cannot denigrate the civilization that he founded.
Well, but that's the thing is, here's the problem, and here's something that Islam really struggles with compared to any other society. You compare it to the Crusades and American slavery, and you can add a whole host of things onto that. You could say, you could look at any of the empires and the powerful civilizations. They got there paving the road along the way with the bodies of their enemies. I mean, Rome,
yep.
All these, popular historians like,
Get to the point.
one of our previous guests, Tom Holland, just are in love with. I mean, Rome was built just out of preemptive attacks on people. Sometimes they were punitive campaigns against Huns or Germans that had been harassing them, but usually it was just you attacked someone. You increased your land. There was no right or wrong about it. You just, that was just the mentality. And now, only in very recent times have we changed the rules. And now you have for example, the developed world, the United States, Europe, even Japan. None of these countries would be in the position they're in if they hadn't had much more ruthless and brutal predecessors who expanded their interests and so forth. The problem is that I think that Islam, the Muslim world, just can't bring itself to divorce itself from the earlier generations the way we have. We say yes, we sold blankets laced with smallpox. We can't change it. It's unfortunate, but we have to disavow that kind of thinking, and I think that this is where the Muslim world...
Not just that, they're trying to go back to it. They're trying to recreate it.
Yeah. That's a very valid point, that this is the weakness, what I said, this is the weakness of the Islamic world right now, is that they don't want to move on. And this is not the whole Islamic world, this is the Islamic clergy, the traditional Islamic clergy, that they just simply don't want to move on, So it's a very good point.
Well, can I ask a question to Chaudhry Sahib? What would an ideal Islamic civilization look like today? Would people be allowed to question Islam? Would atheists and Christians and Hindus be able to not only just have their beliefs, but be able to propagate their beliefs in any given Islamic civilization, or would an Islamic civilization dominate with its laws and its theology?
And would a non-Muslim be able to be a caliphate?
Yeah, very, very good question. So what the freedom of religion is about is three circles. One circle is inside you. nobody or no law or no human being can take that away from you. The second sphere is the essentials of your religion. Essentials meaning I need to pray, I need to fast, and so on. The state should not interfere in those rights. This is the European Union Convention of Human Rights that I'm trying to interpret here. The third sphere is where you have the non-essential things of faith. The non-essential meaning I want to march in the street, I want to slaughter a cow, I want to hit myself with blades, and things like that. Those are non-essentials where the state has a mandate to make laws for public safety and morality. So if it is an Islamic state should be completely pluralistic and should be completely like the Mughal Empire or the Abbasid Empire or the Spanish Empire. Not how they were formed, but how they ruled. Sorry, Klingschor. So how they rule in a pluralistic fashion. Would a non-Muslim, would an atheist be allowed to live and be openly atheist in an Islamic society? I say yes.
Can he be the
yes.
caliphate?
Sorry?
Can he be the caliphate?
Okay.
Yeah. I'd say no.
Yeah.
I'd say right off the bat, no.
No. So
that's not pluralism.
Let's look
no.
Can an atheist be the Khalifa al-Rasul Allah?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah. So if it is a democracy, it depends on how the country is constituted. For example, I'll give you an example. Lebanon is 1/3 Shia, 1/3 Sunni, and 1/3 Christian. And the Lebanese political system works in this way that the head of the president is from one of these three groups, the prime minister is from one of these three groups, and the head of the army is from one of these three groups. And they've always had this convention going, So what I'm trying to say here is that depending on the population, there are different government systems. I don't believe that we are going to go back to an empire and a caliphate that's going to span the whole Islamic world from one ocean to another. It will be a
There's people trying to do that.
Can I just make a differentiation? Akber, you seem to be answering the question, what will the world look like? And what's being asked of you is, if everybody got it right, what would the world look like? We're not
Can we
saying
keep this short though?
what is the ultimate. What we're going for is what is the ultimate aim. For example, would my neighbours, a same-sex couple, be allowed to live together and have intimate intercourse with each other?
Okay, so same-sex couples are not even allowed in every Western country right now. Okay, so
no, they're allowed in England. That's not the point. That's not the point.
So
what I'm saying is, in the ideal Islamic world, can my neighbour be a homosexual couple and have sex?
Okay, very good question. Let's go back. Let's go forward 50, 100 years forward and see Islamic society will always be more conservative than any comparative liberal society. But they have to be pluralistic. They have to understand that women have been liberated. They have to understand that atheists and agnostics are going to exist. They have to understand that certain laws and things, you cannot turn back the clock, but it will always be a more conservative society than others. Does that answer your question?
Whether it does or not, we're moving on. Okay?
What about pagans?
No, I agree. Let's go to a new caller. Nada.
You're asking questions. You're asking questions when, quite frankly, you already know the answer.
I know, but
okay, Nada, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, hi everyone.
Thank you for your patience. So, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? What was it like growing up? What happened when you left the religion, and why did you do it?
Okay, my name is Neda, and I am from Egypt. I'm ex-Muslim. I'm 30 years old. I heard at the beginning, I want to talk, Akber said something about...
Wait, no, come on. Come on. Tell us.
Let's see what she's going to say first.
Life story.
Tell us first before you ask. I mean, I can't stop you. There's no rule that says that you can't ask a question. But let's give that a rest for a moment. Tell us a little bit about what it is that prompted you to leave the religion.
Okay, at the beginning, I felt that I was thinking about prayer when I was like in my teens. I was thinking about prayers, and I was wearing hijab from at the 3rd grade. I was like 10 years old or something like that. I had been forced to wear it because I was in a religious school. So after this, I should be more religious. So when I was in a school, and my family was asking me to do my prayers and everything, to be a religious person. I was like that, but I didn't think about it. But when I start to think about what I'm doing here, I'm praying and I'm wearing this stuff. Why? So I felt that there's nonsense about this. There's something wrong. We pray and nothing happens. But they always tell you that you have to be in a higher stage to be for your God to answer your prayer. And I started to be more and more religious. The second thing that I felt that my family treat me different from my brothers. I saw this in, I looked at, Quran and Islam, and I saw this, that they treat women in a different way than men. Men is in a first stage, and we are lower than them. They ask you to treat women in a lower place. You can beat them, you can, I saw a lot of, some killing, about honor killing. If you suspect your sister as she talking to somebody and you felt something suspicious about this, you have the right to kill her, and nobody's gonna, talk to you, even the government. You can just have a few months in jail and then you go out. And a lot of things like that. The treatment of women like this is not fair. And when you look more, you read the Quran and you start to think about it, you see that there's something, they talk about mercy. God is always about mercy and how mercy he is. And you see in the other side that he's always also talk about killing. And that's nonsense. How could God talk about killing and you can kill somebody else just because you don't believe in your belief, and you have to fight people because they don't believe in God and don't believe in Muhammad. And if somebody said something bad about your God and your Muhammad, and you have to stand and fight for your God. This is all wrong. How could Islam talk about that equality and liberality and how God is mercy on people and treat us like this and put this stuff on our minds? I felt like there's something wrong here, and also I started to look in Christianity. I found the same thing really. So I stopped here, and I think that there's no God can treat people like this. How could he ask us to kill each other? If he wants us to be, all Muslim, why he didn't just do it from the beginning? Why he wants to see blood? Why he wants us to kill each other? Why he wants women to be treated like this? We are the same. We have the same brain. We have the same everything. We are like men. We are human like them. Why they treat us like this?
Can I just ask you really quick?
Yes.
It sounds like there were there were a variety of issues that compelled you in this direction to start questioning, but clearly the gender roles laid down in your society played a significant portion. If you had to guess at what fraction or percentage, how much were the gender roles an impact on your thinking? You know, the differences between, you know.
Difference between men and women?
Yes, under Islam as you knew it growing up.
It's high percentage. I mean.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. I told you, you have the right, you can kill your sister just because you feel suspicious about her. Is that right? No. This is, you have the right over somebody else, over his life. You can take his life. Mm-hmm. Islam gives you this. So, and you know what? That makes me feel like I was thinking that, oh, I wish to be a man. I wanted to have those rights, so I wanted to be a man from the beginning. I was thinking, oh, God, why you didn't make me a man to have all those rights?
Gender. Can I make a point on gender? Because so far, I mean, I agree with you. You're saying I don't like these circumstances, but you know, there's nothing about reality that says we must like it. To say that I disbelieve something because I dislike it really is as erroneous as saying Islam is true because I love it. What was it that convinced you that it wasn't true? Or did you just apostatize because you didn't like it?
No, it's not because I didn't like it. It's about, you see, a scripture here is talking about killing people, you know. You have to kill people, go and fight. This is just, you know, scripture is clear. Talk about killing. So how could you accept this to be your religion?
Well, you know, some time ago I had a...
incredulous.
I'm sorry. Some time ago I had a discussion, Nada, with a Muslim gentleman, and he assured me that Muslim women were the freest, most dignified, honored, and respected women in the world. So your story just doesn't check out. So what was your real reason for leaving?
I didn't believe in this. This is just a bullshit, you know. I pray for like 29 years, and there's no God. I was talking to him. I tried to be more religious to see, is he gonna react with me? Is he gonna do anything? And I saw about a lot of, you know, killing and wars, and God is just go and sitting there and watching us, and he's done nothing. And when we sick, we pray for God, and he just do nothing because he's not there.
You know,
just imagine.
A very interesting thing I noticed about these wars is as soon as Muslims have been stopped from wars, they have stopped expanding. Spain gone, Europe from their hands gone. You know, the borders of Islam literally shrink when you stop them from having wars. So, you know, that just shows they need war to sustain their...
Indonesia was converted. Yeah. Indonesia was converted using Sufi missionaries.
Yeah, it's funny how the only example they can think of is as far away from Mecca as possible.
Well,
even in Central Asia, before the...
Africa, the whole of Africa.
Well, once the Turks had converted, yes, they were insanely bloody. But the actual initial conversion of the Turks, because when the Arab Muslims invaded Central Asia, the Turks fought them very fiercely, and they stopped. The Arabs couldn't go further north. But then the Turks converted from merchant missionaries. And in Africa, too, I mean, there were, once some of the tribes had converted, there were these jihadi states, and it was some very fierce fighting in the Sahel. But the initial contact was through, so I wouldn't necessarily say expansion has played a huge role, just as with the expansion of Christianity into the Americas, for example. It was as a tool of the expanding Spanish and Portuguese empires and so forth. And the Islam is the same, and expanded through conquest. But there was also large expansions through trade and mercantilism, I would posit.
I was wondering if I could respond to Rationalizer for a quick moment, because he said something along the lines of not liking how women are treated, or the position of women in Islam, she not liking that, and that being a reason why she may have left. That reminds me of my own reason why I left. A part of the reason why I left was because I didn't like hell. I didn't like the reality of hell or Jahannam, and that people would be tortured and their skins would be burned off. That was one part of it. But I think that one is able to intellectualize that the treatment of women in her case, or the treatment of people in hell, it simply doesn't resonate with the reality that we're experiencing, in addition to not liking it.
The thing is as well, it's not just a question of like when it comes to hell. It's actually, to me, the Quran becomes logically inconsistent, because the Quran says that not only is Allah forgiving, but is, as Hassan taught me, Al-Rahman Ar-Rahimin, if that's correct, which means he's the most merciful of the merciful, which means he's more merciful than me, and yet I wouldn't burn anyone in hell for eternity, or give them anything metaphorically similar. I wouldn't do that. So therefore, Allah cannot possibly be more merciful than me. There is not a single person that has ever existed in the history of humanity that I would burn in hell.
Exactly. And
it becomes a logical impossibility.
And that's why it could become a combination of not liking it and intellectualizing it in that way.
Yes, exactly. For me, it becomes a logical error. It doesn't matter that I don't like it. It might be true and I don't like it. The fact is what if I become a Muslim and then I go to heaven? Will I know that people are burning to death, burning beyond death in hell? Because if I do, I can't enjoy eternity in heaven knowing that there is more suffering going on than was going on in the world today. I struggle with the suffering going on in the world today. Hell would be worse than that. Combined, it would be worse than that for the individual. I couldn't live for eternity knowing that that was happening. And I certainly couldn't live basically in allegiance with the entity that was doing it to those people. Now, Muslims say to me, oh, there's no family in heaven. So, you know, if your mum and your dad are burning, it's not going to bother me so much because there's no family in heaven. Well, you know, the kids that are starving on the African continent aren't my family. But, you know, it really, really bothers me. They don't have to be my cousins and my brothers and my sisters. It really bothers me. So who would be in heaven? Would it be me? Or would it be me with my humanity removed? Whatever it is, it wouldn't be me.
Exactly, and that's exactly why I turned away from Abrahamic theology as well. That exact reason.
Only human, as evil as they are, could create something like hell. The concept.
So, Nada, coming back to Nada's question, there is a big problem with feminism and women's rights within Islamic cultures, I would say, and there is no equality in most or all Islamic cultures for women when it comes to how men are treated and how women are treated in social matters, legal matters, and so on. And there is tremendous room for improvement there. And I will not name the Paul of Islam yet. I might get hanged for it. But it was the Paul of Islam, in my opinion, who brought Islam back from its liberal direction back to the Arab culture in the 2nd or 3rd century after Hijrah. So we had a shift back.
Paul?
Sorry?
The Paul of Islam. You're saying the Paul of Islam?
I'm not going to say the name.
Tell me who! I really want to know!
So
right,
when Islam... So when Islam spread from Mecca and Medina over to Baghdad and the Roman Empire, it absorbed a lot of the liberalism and the rule of law of the Roman Empire. Some people were not happy with that, and they wanted Islam to go back to the Arab culture and the Arab tribal culture. Okay? So and then
look where it landed them.
Yeah, exactly. So Islam had a very liberal upshoot in the Umayyad, in the beginning of the Umayyad era, but then it got dragged back into Arab culture, where we find it up till now. You know. So I will not name him, but
His name rhyme with El Mazali.
Anyway,
still alive?
I had Rafi back. Rafi wanted to come back for a minute, but we're going to let him go to let in our final guest. Thank you, Rafi. Take care. You're welcome back anytime. Final guest, Alishba.
Mind you, though, there's actually a wealth of Islamic feminist works out there. I mean, Fatima, Qureshi, Atheismo, Amina Wadud, but they're out there if people only listen. I think they're wrong, but they're out there.
Alishba, you'll want to mute your blog TV or your Ustream, whichever you're listening to the other audio, otherwise you're going to hear everything twice.
Can I ask Rationalizer one quick question?
I'm sorry.
Right, just a sec. You said it was the last guest. Are you going to try and bring back on the Egyptian gods?
Yeah, I'm afraid with
wanted me to turn off my Ustream, right?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
And Rash, I'm afraid the quality of that connection was just too bad. I don't.
No, but the thing is,
I understand.
He was watching, now let me explain. He was watching the video streams from like 5 other people, so that was eating up bandwidth. I've just talked him through the settings on Skype to disable all the videos, so hopefully he'll have more bandwidth, and it might work, so I just thought it might be worth giving it a try.
Okay, I just turned my video on, and if you can see me,
yep,
does it work?
See and hear you. So, thank you for joining us. Tell us your story.
Well, I am 22 now, and I'm still in college in my last year. I was never really hardcore religious because I grew up in Al-Khani Ismaili family, which is like very different than the regular Islam, which is like I don't necessarily anymore accuse of other people calling Ismailism heresy because it's very different because the way I was brought up, I had no problem with any religion. I was kind of like pantheistic in that view. According to Ismailism, the Qiyamah is not when the world ends. It's actually when you die. Heaven is not a garden. Heaven is actually seeing God and getting to know who God is. And hell is when you don't get to know who God is. So that was the philosophy. It was more like a philosophical approach. Plus, the prayers are not the same as other Muslims. All the devotional literature, the songs are inspired by Hindu bhajans and everything like that. So it's very, very. It's a very cool concept because it's very. Sufism was derived from Ismailism. So I necessarily never had big problems with religion, and I was like always a hippie kind of person. I'm just like, yeah, you know, even atheists are fine. Like everybody's okay as long as nobody kills each other. But
there's the rub.
yeah. Like, no, seriously, like it was, and I was never the one to defend religion or to. I'm just like, okay, if atheists want to say something, they can say something, even though you shouldn't say something. You shouldn't phrase it in a way that's gonna hurt people. That was my approach way back when. But like a few years ago, I was in a debate with a friend of mine, and I was like in this very spiritualistic phase, and he was just like, well, it's absolutely irrational, and I'm just like, well, why does it matter if it doesn't make sense? And I actually said that, and I was like, back at myself, I'm like, did I actually say that? Oh, it doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense. So I think, like, from a human rights perspective, I was never that much in clash with religion until I took some college courses as well. One of my courses was called Lipstick and Jihad, and it was Islam and Feminism. It was an amazing class, and that was one of the that class had one of the bigger impacts along with Hebrew scriptures and a bunch of other classes that I took just for kicks and giggles, and then I started talking about it critically because I got introduced to Christopher Hitchens at the time. So I became very upfront instead of passive and hippie about it, which is very much against my Quaker school. So I'm like, you know, that person who's ruffling the feathers because everybody wants to avoid controversy here. So my atheism is more, I denied Big Bang. Despite all of that, I was a Sufi, and I think Sufism is a very different branch. So
that's why my transition into atheism was only logical, and it was just a matter of time. And I think it was the first blow was feminism, when I started to see the loopholes that were hidden away in Ismaili faith, because there is the only sexist part that I can think of is that the imam cannot be a woman. Other than that, leading the prayers or anything else, there is nothing sexist about it. Hijab is actually banned in Ismailism. Like, Ismaili women should not be wearing hijab. They should not be wearing burqa and stuff like that. And you can wear sleeveless and whatever, and go to the prayer hall and do whatever, basically whatever is pleasing your soul. And you see God through music and dance. And men and women are not separate, like they're not segregated. So I never actually had like direct conflict with religion until I read the Quran by myself. And then I was just like, okay, well, if this is wrong, the first thing was to challenge the imam's authority, which I challenged by deriving from Hitchens' rhetoric. And then later on, I went back to studying Plato and Socrates and all that kind of stuff. And then it just became very clear to me that I need to get away from this if I really want to emancipate it. And I became a very accepting person after that, though my rhetoric became more like Hitchens, and I do tend to go all hitch slap on people. But I don't think it's a bad thing considering what other people are going through and what other people are ignorant of.
Can I ask you really quick to spell the name of that sect that you said you belong to?
Ismaili, Ismaili, and there are like different factions of Ismailism, like you have Nizari Ismailis, and then you have Bora Ismailis.
Okay. So it's the same sect that a lot of Westerners would pronounce Ismaili?
Yes.
So that just sounds like the best religion ever. Smileyism. I could have sworn that was what you were saying. I was like, well, I'm going to drop my penguin cult and just make my faux religion Smileyism. It's the friendliest religion ever. Occasionally we have a holy war, some people get killed, limbs are chopped off, but Smileyism. It's great.
Your opinion about pantheism and Hinduism now?
Like in Ismaili faith, the only Arabic part is the Sunni Shia prayer. It doesn't have the same structure. It doesn't have the same verses. Some of the verses are actually made up too. They're not like directly from the Quran. They're just like Arabic prayers that are given by the imam and things like that. So the only Arab influenced part about Ismailism is the prayer itself, which lasts about, if you're actually pronouncing it properly, about like 4 to 5 minutes. And you don't stand, you just like do it while sitting and whatever. You don't even have to do wuzu or that or anything. Like pregnant women can pray.
So you were from the Aga Khani side of things, right? I would imagine.
Yes.
I mean, here's the thing. I'll admit that Shiism continues to be a blind spot as far as my own studies are concerned, because most of the people I talk to are Sunnah, because most Muslims are Sunnah. But my impression of my impression as a result, it doesn't matter. I try not to let my perception of Shia Islam be poisoned by the fact that most of what I know about it, I'm told by Sunnah Muslims who don't really like Shia Muslims. Many of them don't even consider them. But I do know that compared to, for example, the Twelvers, Ismailism is considered the oddball branch of even Shiism, and then it's bred what seemed to be very conservative to very liberal. Some of the most liberal interpretations and some of the most conservative. As a matter of fact, aren't the Alawites of Syria technically please correct me if I'm mistaken about that, because that.
No.
So
the Alawi.
Yeah. So the Alawiya are considered marginally outside of mainstream Shiism, whereas the Aga Khani Ismaili, because they subscribe to the Jafri school of thought, the Jafri fiqh, but they have their own rituals and everything else, so they are considered slightly within Shiism.
Okay. But the Alawi sect has Ismaili origins.
Yeah. No. The Wikipedia tells me that the Alawis are a branch of the Ithna Ashariya, the 12er Shia Islam. But,
okay.
But well, who knows? Wikipedia just could be lying.
Yeah, I don't know. That was the I could have sworn I read somewhere that it was. It doesn't matter, but I am certain that there have been very hyper conservative forms of Ismailism, and then the hippie 60s flower in your hair kinds of versions of it, all from the same breakaway school.
Like, see, this is a distinction here, because then you have the last division that happened was Boris and Nizaris, and because like the Ismailis, the current Afghan Ismailis ended up following the progeny of Imam Nizar, as opposed to where the Boras went, and Boras went essentially the same way as the as Nashris, because like they have this like concept of like the invisible imam and all that kind of stuff. They have like some concepts going on over there, but like what ended up happening is that the Ismaili concept was that a guide cannot be dead, a guide cannot be non-existent.
Occulted.
Yeah.
Hidden. Yeah.
Guide can be present at all times because he has to guide according to the times. That's why in Ismailism the emphasis is never put on you should go read the Quran. Instead, you are in your, because like I went to my religious school too, which is totally opposite of madrasa. Like it's not like a madrasa, because girls and guys, we all sat together. You can date people. If you're in you get kicked by your mom, but that's a different story. But other than that, the devotional literature are all in Hindu bhajan rags. There are 36 rags, and they all are Hindu bhajan rags. The songs are not similar throughout the world, because the ones that developed in the Indian subcontinent are in Gujarati, Sindhi, and all the other Sanskrit languages. But the ones that developed in the northern areas, they are in Badakhshani languages, all the languages that evolved there, Farsi and all that kind of stuff. So it's not Arab influence. And then the most attractive part about Ismailism was that because there is less emphasis on what the Quran directly says, there was more emphasis on what you need to do according to the times. So, if you're a woman, you should go do things that men do. And it's like there's like the honor problem and all that kind of stuff is virtually non-existent in Ismailism. Seen any direct prohibition against alcohol or whatever. They do go like, yes, substance abuse is bad for your health and all that kind of stuff, but I have never heard a moral argument against it. I've only heard like health arguments against it, even when I was growing up. The more emphasis put on intellect and intellectual discovery as opposed to like because it's in the Quran, therefore it's true. The concept for the Quran is that, Quran is there and it's a textbook, but it's something that we may not always see it as relevant to time. That's why you need the Imam's guidance and all that kind of stuff. So the less emphasis on Quran was what enabled reform Islam, and I would say that if Islam were to reform as a whole, it would take the shape of Ismailism. But the thing is that due to this fear that Ismailis might be persecuted exactly the way Ahmadis are, no non-Ismaili is allowed to research about or like at least go into the prayer halls. There is an Institute of Ismaili Studies in London, and they are doing tremendous work, and all sorts of people are working there, Shia, Sunnis, everybody, not on these atheists, everybody's working to historically find the roots and all that kind of stuff about Islam and all that stuff. But I'm not sure that I can see, at least in the near future, if that. Because for me is that I'm like trying to change my attitude a little bit, because like for the past few years I've always been like criticizing Islam directly, but I'm wanting to change type approach a little bit, because even in personal relations, I tend to have less confrontations with Sufis, with pantheists, with with hippie kind of Ismailis. I tend to have less problems with them. So I'm like, okay, if you cannot leave your religion altogether, if you can move towards reforming your religion, and the next step is to renounce it entirely. I think that is a better approach to take when you are trying to talk to other people. I lose my temper quite often because I cannot stand misogynistic comments. I'm not Rebecca Watson. Please do not put me in that. Me out if I'm in an elevator. As long as you're not touching me and you're asking respectfully, I'm fine.
Wow. I get in trouble for bringing IRL politics in this show. You bring in YouTube politics, you'll never be invited back. Oh yeah. Now here's the issue: is if I was an orthodox-minded Muslim, you would have lost me at the Quran isn't quite as important. That's when I would have just said, oh, okay, thanks a lot. Slam the door in your face like you're a Jehovah's Witness. Thanks a lot. Nice try, Satan, or what have you. I mean, of course, that emerges in conservative Christian circles as well, where if you're of the Orthodox school, and then a sort of softer version that says, well, maybe you don't have to take the Bible and or Quran quite literally. When you're in the mindset that there is a straight path, it's as narrow as a tightrope, and only the truly virtuous and strong and resilient walk it. It's easy to say that this is just one of many obstacles in my path. These liberal forms of the religion, these changed forms, where the Word of God isn't so tantamount. It's a very thorny problem.
I think it's an issue of literalism.
Let's let Farhan come in.
I think it's an issue of literalism. You see it within Christianity as well. People who read the Bible, whether the Old Testament or the New Testament, and take it literally, they're going to have a completely different worldview. Traditionally in Islam, the people who see it metaphorically, whether it's the Mu'tazila, whether it's the Ash'ari or Maturidi schools of thought, or even some of the more heterodox like the Ahmadiyya and the Ismaili, when you see it metaphorically, you find them to be more liberal. Generally, you find them to be more liberal. A quick question for Lishba, because I want to hear what she has to say about that too. Are Ismailis pantheists? Are they pantheists? Do they believe everything's God?
I don't even know how to answer that question, because it's so difficult to address that. Because here's the thing: in the you would hear Quran, the authority of Imam comes from the basics of Islam, Prophet, Ali, and da 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 da. But if you read Sir Sultan Muhammad Shah's one of his chapters in his memoirs, it says Islam, the religion of my ancestors. He goes on to say that Socrates was a prophet too, Krishna was a prophet too. So you see,
yeah.
And when you religious school, when you are like if you read the Ismaili Ginans, a lot of the Ginans that they don't allow to be sung openly anymore, at least in the Jamaat Khana, because they got a lot of threats in Pakistan. A lot of to the Imams are made that he's Naklanki, or he's the 10th avatar of Krishna, of Vishnu. So and then you go back to the pharaohs and stuff like that, and then the story of Moses was the one. It was told to me when I was in, I think, the first grade, that Moses looked up to the sun and said, "Oh, it might be my God," and then it sat, and the sun set, and then
Abraham, yeah.
It was yeah, my bad. That story, and then they were like, "Oh, well, everything sets. My God cannot be something that sets. My God cannot be something that I can understand." So this is the philosophy. It's a more philosophical approach than literalist approach, or like I that yes, the emphasis on the authority of Imam is there. Like they do say that the authority of Imam is that if Imam says it's day, it's day. If he says it's night, it's night. But Imam is never going to say something that's contrary to intellect. So you are always encouraged. That's why it's very easy for Smileys to take that next step. It's very easy to talk to them. That's non-violent. Like, I've never heard any violence coming out of, at least in the past few years, coming out of like this particular Nizari sect. So it's a very difficult question for me to answer, because what they would teach you, if somebody asked you outside if you're a Muslim, you should say you are. And that's teachings, the actual process, that's like one thing that you hear when you say, oh, I'm being accused in my school, that, you know, I went through this my entire school life. Like, all of my Muslim friends, Sunni friends, they were like, oh, you guys are like Ahmadis, and I'm just like, no, we are Muslims. So, you know, like, there's a terrible thing right there. And then every time I would walk from my home to the Jamaat Khana, every time we have like celebrations, because celebrations consist of dandiyaras. Like, you know, you're just like, dandiyaras, Muslims, like, what is going on? But like, it's there. And then we get death threats from the Sunnis around. So what they have to do is they have to get special police force to give, to provide security. So that further encourages prejudice, because they're like, oh, why are Smileys so special that the state is giving them police security? Why aren't we getting any security? So, you know, there's a lot of politics involved in this. So, like, inside Jamaat Khana, if you pick up any book that is being taught in the religious centers, you will not be able to tell if it's pantheism or not, but it's encouraged to accept everything under the umbrella that God is something that you cannot express, God is something that you cannot write down, and God is something that you cannot say that I have the authority that I know. So, and it's like, even if you know God,
Farhan,
that's how they're taught. So it's like, you have songs, then you have celebratory songs in Sanskrit, Gujarati, and Kathiawadi and Kutchi, and then you have the prayer, and then you have Navroz, which is a pagan celebration. It has no connection to Ismailism. Like, it's just an Ismaili imam married a Persian princess. That's how it got adopted. But there's nothing more. These symbols of Navroz, like what you get in Jamaat Khana, you get like wheat grains, and you get like sugar. It's like wheat for prosperity, sugar so that you will talk sweet, and you get a little coin, again, for prosperity and things like that. The symbols are all secular. I don't remember being taught hatred against any group. They're like, even if you say you're an atheist, you are a human being, and that is the embodiment of God. So these are the concepts that you learn in the religious center, and you learn. I used to Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan's Gorak Danda in my religious center.
Yeah.
No, so it's really
one of my favorite songs from.
Right, but it's weak agnosticism because it's overpowered by the Islam. But it is not discouraged to ask questions about religion. It's never told why I'm asking that, ever. So, you know, but there are people like my grandma. She would freak out if she would find out that, you know, my mom and dad know, but my grandma cannot, because she's very attached to
I can't help it. My camera keeps moving in and out. My bad.
But
anyway,
why are you getting so intimate on the camera for us?
Anyway, I think we're gonna wrap it up soon. Rash and Kling had a couple more guests, but I think when you factor in the hour technical difficulties, we had 3 hours of show. I welcome them back on the next show, whatever we talk about. But we knew when we advertised why we left Islam, we knew that we would have an overflow of guests. So we thank everyone. Apologize to those who didn't make it. But what a contrast between Nada and Alishba's respective stories. One it seems who chafed under the conservative aspects, and one who was sort of free to roam, and each for different reasons. It seems like in many ways religion in the modern era is burning the candle at both ends, and that is whether like Farhan or Nada, some of the aspects start a moral or emotional argument based on their strictures, or then you have, of course, Alishba, Rash. Well, Rash wasn't a Muslim, but he has his own personal story. You know, when they're free to roam and think and discover things, they end up at the same point. So that's my final word. Let's go. I'm going to go counterclockwise and give everyone last word, starting with the Rationalizer before we cut out. Oh, by the way, someone asked me, can you ask the panel what they think about the draft constitution crisis in Egypt? No, that would add another 4 hours onto the length of the show. No one is permitted to address that. Rationalizer.
Right. Okay. Obviously there's a lot of social practices that have developed over the years where Muslims are told they're not allowed to criticise certain subjects and what have you. And there's a good Voltaire quote, which was, "To learn who rules over you, simply find out who you are not allowed to criticise."
Klingschor.
I would urge anyone who's interested in the Gin and Tonic Show to find us on YouTube at YouTube/The Gin and Tonic Show, Facebook on Facebook.com/The Gin and Tonic Show, and Twitter, which is our Twitter name is The Gin and Tonic. Of course, yeah, I think that's all of them. And on the subject, pardon?
And on iTunes. You always forget iTunes.
Yes, and on iTunes. Thank you, Rashman. Also, I would just say it's a pity that today, I mean, some dozen Muslim nations mandate the death penalty for apostasy. I think it's quite a pity. It's surely an issue that needs to change ASAP, I would say. I pity apostates.
Apostasy in Islam is more like an extreme sport than a position on a philosophy or religion, isn't it? Nada, before we, and thank you for joining us, Nada, before you go. Do you have any last words?
Yeah, thank you all for bringing me in. The last word that I want just to, you talk about Egypt, and I was just want to finish with this. You want to make Islam is, some people say that it's a good thing, and that's depend on their morals, you know, the human morals. It's not depending on the real Islam. And if you say that's the real Islam, you are lying to yourself and you are lying to the others. And the picture, as you see in Egypt, that you see Muslim Brotherhood, they are using the real scripture of Islam, and they are killing a lot of people just because they are Muslim like them, but they are just liberal and secular people, and some people just say against them, against their belief, and or against just the some stuff about the you know, stuff about the how to deal things in Egypt. So Muslims don't accept others. That's the real Muslim. Don't accept others, and they kill each other, and they kill other Muslims. As you see in Egypt, a lot of blood, and there's gonna be a lot of blood and a lot of wars, because they just want to be alone. They don't want others. You want to be with them, you have to be one of them, and that's it. And thank you all.
Thank you very much. Alishba, quick final word.
My final word is that something I borrowed from Dawkins, that religion's biggest fault is that it makes you comfortable with not knowing, and that was my fault. I was curious about the universe. I wanted to be an astronaut since I was a child. My parents were never against science. I grew up learning evolution as a fact, first introduced to me by my dad, Big Bang as a fact, all of those things, and a lot of those things I discovered by myself by studying science by myself when I was a kid, because I was always into, you know, inventing things and like playing with human genome, and I had this crazy idea when I was a kid. But when you put in the God factor, I think it's very much a personal struggle. It's not something that, you know, somebody said so, therefore they should be right kind of thing. It's that you have to go very, very deep into philosophy. You can only learn truly by reflection and not by borrowing things. And that is where religion's problem comes in because religion is all citation and religion is all reiteration. So what you have to do is you have to go back, shake the bases, just like I shook my bases at the authority of Imam. I had to question that. I had to question the politics of that, and I had to question everything. So it is very important, I would say, that if you don't want to be labeled as an atheist, if you still have some beliefs, if you're questioning, go the skeptic route. Start down every single thing that you see, including what you believe right now and what everybody else is believing too, and that is the only way towards self-liberation, and self-liberation should be the goal. Why do this for somebody else? Why wouldn't you want to liberate yourself? And if you don't want to liberate yourself, then that is the biggest slavery I can think of, and that's very pitiful.
Okay, Farhan.
I guess I'll advertise my project, which is beliefrevision.com, where I'm trying to encourage people to replace religiosity with spirituality, and to encourage universalism, to humble themselves to agnosticism, to open themselves to reality through rationalism, empiricism, and skepticism, and to cherish reality by experiencing it through mysticism. That's a plethora of things that I'm encouraging. But the reason why I left Islam as a religion, as an orthodoxy, or at least the orthodoxy of it, was because of its doctrine of hell, because of its doctrine of Jahannam that teaches that people are going to be burned and tortured for eternity. This is, I think it's antithetical to how we understand reality and how we experience it. And this is the reality that opened me up to the fact that Abrahamic religions got it wrong.
What is that honorific you use when you and Akber were talking to each other? It's the last name with Sah?
Chaudhry Sahib. That's an Urdu word which means it's a way to respect an elder.
Sahib.
Thank you.
Yeah?
Thank you.
Okay, well, Chaudhry Sahib, I don't know why you agreed to come on today. You knew what was going to happen. You knew that it was going to be just a firing squad all the way to Horizon of the usual suspects in the form of us. And then, I don't know why you agreed to do this, but you hung in there. I don't agree with you. I mean, yeah, I don't agree with you on anything, but you have my respect for sticking in and hanging in there. Yeah, even for staying in there through the full hour of technical difficulties. We appreciate you coming on here, and as always, I salute the courage it takes to come on when you know that the entire panel is of the opposing opinion. We thank you for your input. So you have the last word of the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me on. Having a Muslim on is a great thing. My main interest, I mean, I was not here. I was here because I was the only Muslim, but also I was here because I want to know what these young people are thinking. I want to know what is driving their mind, because Islam is in a state of transition right now, politically, socially, culturally, and so on. Islam is not going to go away as some evil dream of the world. It is not going to die away. It's going to be with us for the next millennia. So we have to somehow bring it into the modern age to some degree. Now, done very carefully, because as Alishba said and others said, although the Al-Khani religion and other stuff are very appealing, they don't have that critical mass, or they don't have that what I call the orthodox roots that Catholicism has, or that Sunnism has, that are required, that people need. They need some very, very strong roots for that religion. So it was a very interesting show. Yeah, it got a bit sparky and a bit hot at times, but that's what makes people watch it. And thank you for having me on, and I wish all of you guys best of luck. And it helped me understand all the different reasons why people have issues with Islam,
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our patient audience who had to evacuate to Ustream because we couldn't get Blog TV to work. Thank you in advance to everyone who watches us on YouTube. And we will see you.
Find us on social media.
Yeah. We'll see you. We'll let you know whether we're doing a Christmas show in inverted commas, because people may be busy then. Our next show would fall on the 29th. We'll see what happens, but we'll try to alert everyone in advance so that people aren't just sitting there if we don't do a show. Thank you, everyone. Salam. Take care.